Me neither. No way.
And then there were two. It's down to PSA and CGC. Have the grading wars just begun? We're about to talk about it coming up next on the Ungraded Truth podcast. Detective Comics set a record for 1.8 million. Nobody really cares.
Who are annoyed that people are asking them questions, is this book banned? That question didn't exist a year ago.
Somebody's submitting like 25 vintage books and getting 15 9.9s.
We always think, how can it ever get crazier? And then it always does.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the #1 collectible show in the universe, the Ungraded Truth podcast. I am your host, Swaggle Haas, joined by my esteemed co-hosts, Automatic Comics, Ryan, Manu, the 99 Newsstand, and new to the podcast, but not new to the channel, we got a special guest, Lawrence, Mighty Comics and Collectibles. Lawrence, thanks so much for hopping on the channel today. It's good to see you here.
You too, guys. Thank you for having me. I'm excited. Looking forward to this one.
Great to be hanging with you. It's been a while.
Yeah.
And you've got the top box there, so you get to talk first after each one of those.
That's how it goes.
That's
all right.
true.
Yeah,
I got yelled at when I went out of turn. So
yeah, we kept talking over each other, so we just decided like every time we have to go just clockwise in terms of the talking order. But it's a good thing that we got you here because after Neo called his shot, saying that CBCS was going to close up doors this year, he decided to just do a walk-off. He was like, I called this, guys. I don't even need to show up to this week's show. I don't need to talk about it. You already know my opinions on the major story, which is, of course, CBCS closing their doors. But Neo said that he'll be back next week. No, just jokes aside, Neo couldn't make this episode, so we had to call in the Ringer, Lawrence, to join us on this podcast here today. And it's a good show for us to have you because, our big topic is going to be CBCS. You put out some great videos talking about that stuff already, and we're going to kind of go into all of these various topics. But before we get there, we have to do, of course, a little bit of housekeeping. Guys, fellas, listeners, the Ungraded Truth YouTube channel cannot be stopped. We have been growing exponentially every week, currently sitting at 1,330 subscribers. It is an incredible feat how much we have been able to grow this YouTube channel. But if you have not yet joined the hype train, be sure to head on over to the link in the description and give the Ungraded Truth channel a sub. And maybe more importantly, go over to this link right here and find us on Spotify. That is right. This podcast is on your favorite RSS feed. We currently have 23 5-star reviews. Now, that's a lot of stars, but I got to tell you guys a little story. I was at WonderCon, this past weekend, and I was talking to this guy who I thought was really, really cool. His name was Todd McFarlane. And Todd McFarlane was like, I was like, hey, Todd, I have a podcast that's about collecting. He's like, oh, that's so cool. Like, what's your podcast? And I was like, oh, it's the Ungraded Truth. So he looked it up, and then he was like, oh, you guys only have 23 stars? Like, I only listen to podcasts that have 25 5-star reviews. And I felt so bad. So if you guys could do me a favor and make sure that Todd McFarlane one day listens to our podcast by getting us to 25 stars, that would be super, super appreciated. But other little housekeeping things, of course, this is a co-stream across all of our various platforms. Ryan is streaming on his channel. We are streaming on the Ungraded Truth channel as well. We are streaming on the Swaggle House channel. And, if you're coming over from Mighty's audience, be sure to sub up everyone here. If you guys have not yet heard from Mighty, be sure to sub him up. His link is actually always in the description because he is a friend of the show. But with that, guys, I think we got to, not bury the lead, and we got to get right into the main topic, which was, of course, CBCS closing up shop. CBCS service update. I'm going to read over the story in case you guys aren't caught up on it. I'm sure people are well versed in it, but let's kind of give it an official send-off for CBCS. They said this: founded in 2014, CBCS quickly became a trusted resource for comic collectors seeking professional grading and authentication. Since then, CBCS has helped preserve and document countless comics across the hobby. As we look ahead, we're increasing our focus and investment in the core Beckett brand and our broader grading capabilities, with the announcements to come soon. As part of our strategy to focus on the Beckett brand, we've made the challenging decision to shut down CBCS effective April 17th. New submissions will no longer be accepted. All existing orders and any submissions received by that date will continue through the grading process as normal. We appreciate the collectors, creators, and grading team who helped build CBCS into a respected part of the comic book community. Fellas, we're going to table the story for a bit so we can kind of weigh in on CBCS and give them the proper, goodbye that I think that they deserve. We're going to talk about, what CGC's response has been to this particular post, specifically that of Steve Eichenbaum, and also what they're trying to do to acquire some of the CBCS customers. But, Lawrence, since you're kind of the guest of honor here, maybe we can sort of start with you, and you can kind of give your thoughts on what did you make of when CBCS did this announcement? Did it come as a surprise? Were you not surprised by it? And overall, like, what do you kind of make of, CBCS's career within the comic book collecting hobby?
I think, for me personally, as soon as we got the announcement that they were bought out by PSA, I knew they were cooked. And I said this before, on the couple of videos that I did, is like they were doomed when they kind of refused to kind of change and kind of adapt how the market was going. That's what I've said all along. And actually gave numerous stories I've told about just my interaction with them a couple of times that I have dealt with them, not just submitting books, but conversations that I've actually had with them as well. So it wasn't a surprise to me at all. And, ever since then, for me personally, it's just been like waiting for it to happen. It was just like, it was a matter of time. That's the best way I could say it.
Yeah. What about you, Ryan or Manu? Do you guys have thoughts on CBCS officially closing up shop?
Yeah, I mean, when we talked about this before, I think most of us were expecting it to get shut down or to get shuttered. But I still think it was quicker than myself and a lot of people probably thought it would happen. Now, granted, they seem to have been like largely shuttered for a while, just because we've seen like they haven't been any at the cons, like accepting books. Like you go onto their social media and there's like 0 posts from them. I mean, so it's really not like a big surprise, but it's still, I don't know. I guess like I thought it maybe would have been like a year or something, but they just got right to it and, closed it down within just a few months. I mean, like I was looking at it, of the video I had made when they first announced it, and it was just like December. I mean, that's what, 3 months basically. And they shut them down.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like you guys already said, I think it was just one of those things where the writing was on the wall. Collectors had acquired CBCS. It seemed like it was going to be, a matter of time. I was a little surprised that, it did happen this soon. I mean, I kind of thought that it could happen, but, they definitely wanted to, sweep it under the rug and kind of get it going. And, again, shout out to Dio for kind of nailing that prediction at the top. But Manu, before we kind of introduce, the fallout of this story with CGC and PSA, did you kind of have any little wrap-up thoughts on CBCS closing up doors?
No, I echo the same sentiments as you guys and as Neo. Like, I feel like we've been talking about this story before it actually happened. It's like even before the acquisition of collectors and acquiring Beckett, it still felt like it was just a matter of time before CBCS would somehow find the exit. And once collectors bought Beckett, well then we knew it was eventually going to happen. So I feel like we've been, saying our goodbyes for a while. And now the moment has come, which obviously, cements it. But now we get to find out what's going to happen next and what's going to, who's going to take the lion's share of the existing CBCS slabs out in the world. And how do collectors feel about this, and that's kind of where we're at now. So and there's a bunch of things that we still need answered, right? Like and I will get into that in a moment, actually. But yeah, I just echo the same sentiments.
Let me ask you a question before we move on. Because it happened so quickly, do you guys think that maybe there was more to meets the eye here, or maybe things were far worse than we possibly thought?
I think things might have been even worse than we thought. And we thought things could be pretty bad, but I do have a feeling that as a business, they were just,
well,
it was, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to say, like, I talked about this in a recent video because I was talking to one of the pressers that I use. And so this was Impressive Comic Books. And he said in the last 2 years, and he presses a lot of books, he had 0 submissions from anybody that sent into him that said they wanted him to go to CBCS. I mean, that just tells you like nobody was sending them any books. I mean, obviously there's some people were sending them books, but like the vast majority were not going there.
Yeah.
Sad that to me, when collectors acquired them, I could understand, like, from a corporate standpoint, they're just sort of like, why are we even like gonna put any more resources into this thing? Let's just kind of wrap it up and like kind of carry on here. But to your point, Ryan, like, I would have thought that maybe they had a little bit of runway because perhaps they did actually still have business. But if collectors acquired them and actually saw, oh, you guys are not even getting submissions, then it's kind of like, well, what are we even waiting for? But anyways, after this announcement, a couple interesting things came out with the fallout of this. Most notably, Steve Eichenbaum, who is the CEO of CCG, otherwise known as the parent company to CGC, put out a statement. I'm not going to go through his entire statement, but suffice to say, he threw some shade over at CBCS closing up shop. And I don't think that this went the way that he thought it was going to go. Shout out to Sammy Skeleton Keys comments,
Yes.
who actually had like one of the most upvoted comments right here, where she just said, this post is so tacky and in such poor taste. I think that CGC got absolutely buried for this post right here, which seemed like a big fumble. Considering that they were very likely going to get, albeit a small portion of CBCS's current customer base to go over to their doors anyways. But I saw from a lot of people saying like, well, this is really off-putting. I'm just going to go over to PSA now, and understandably so. And maybe CGC quickly after this had to say, you know what, guys, this is our way of saying sorry on behalf of Steve Eichenbaum. We're now going to open it up to make the switch to CGC 20% off of your cross-grading submissions. They had no specific reference to CBCS in this, but we all know that they're definitely inferring CBCS. Oddly, though, PSA has not had a similar post talking about offering some sort of cross-grading promotion. You would think that they would want to do that, although Neo let us know that when SGC was acquired by Collectors, they didn't offer any sort of like cross grade to PSA either. So maybe that's just kind of a company policy. But anyways, I'm going to go table it right there and kind of kick it back to you guys as the panel. Did you have thoughts on, Steve Eichenbaum's message here, the backlash that came of it, and what do you kind of make of this sort of power vacuum of these two companies, kind of looking to acquire that collector base by offering promotions?
I mean, so there's a few things. I mean, one, I think I'm in the same camp as like the commenters. I think that was just, it was an unnecessary post. They didn't need to do it. It didn't help anything. Like, you're trying to get people to come over to your business, and they're already people that probably left it to go to CBCS. And then you kind of make it seem like, yeah, it's just like, it puts a bad taste in your mouth. I feel like it was unnecessary. All they had to do was offer the 20% thing off the bat and just leave it at that. That would have been enough. I do think it's different though, with PSA not offering something with SGC versus CBCS, because SGC is still grading cards. CBCS is not anymore. And so like, you would think that would then be something where you'd really want to try to grab onto any customers that they have there. Now, I personally, like, I never buy into the whole thing where people are like, oh, I'm just going to go to PSA. Then it's like, you were never going to go to CGC in the first place. Like, I don't buy into that thing. It's like, if you're going to go to one of them or the other, you're going to do it. Like, this isn't going to be the thing that decides it for you. Like, I don't know. Like, if you were going to go, if you weren't going to go to CGC, or no, if you were considering, like, if you're on the fence, I don't feel like this is going to push you on the other side. You're probably just not going to grade anything, would be my bet.
Yeah, this post, I think you guys have just said this post was just unnecessary, and I love Sammy's comment from Skeleton Key, shout out. That was in poor taste. Like, it was so tacky, and it was completely unnecessary. So
when I saw this drop, there's two things that went through my mind. First, how soon am I getting a Swaggelhaus video on this? Because I was waiting a long time, longer than I thought I should have had to wait for your video to come out on this. But the second thing, I'm just reading it, I'm like starting to laugh and I'm starting to smirk. I'm like, why isn't like the second time this guy putting his foot in his mouth? I'm like,
yeah,
just me going through the comments and just reading this stuff. I was like, oh my God, is this really gonna sink them a little bit? I can't believe he's doing this again. So like, it was just mind boggling. But I hate to say it, am I one of those guys that like really enjoys when people put their foot in their mouth, and you see all the comments come in and just ripping the dude. So yeah, I kind of enjoyed it a little bit.
Well,
I feel bad, but at the same time, I enjoyed it.
On that note, I want to say, yeah, the comment section was just gold. I mean, like, that was one of the most amusing and most fuck yeah sort of comment sections I've seen in a long time. And no, and I love how many people were like, because sometimes you'll see CGC put out like, whatever sort of gimmicky thing, and you'll see a bunch of people celebrating it. And it's like, who the fuck are these people that are like supporting this corny, dumb shit? And then when some reality hits, and then you see the real thoughts, the real opinions, the 600 upvotes on something saying this is fucking stupid, that's when I'm like, oh yeah, people are actually aware that this is annoying. But also, it's so funny to see in the comment section, damn, you got me going. I was like, yeah, I agree with everything. But no, also in the comment section, like, at the amount of people that were like, trust, because Steve repeatedly, like, we're the trusted source. Our whole idea is true. What the are you talking about? A lot of the reason that we have things to talk about is because you can't be trusted, is because you keep screwing everything up, and it is actually brilliant to see that comment section light up in such sort of an accurate way. But, and when they do some dope, we give them some credit for that too, but they got a lot of things to fix. But yeah, Steve it is the second time he's put out a statement that's like, dude, you could have just not done that at all. But thank you for doing it.
Yeah, I was trying to remember what the other thing was. But I remembered there was a statement that was, you're just like, why even bother with that? But I could not remember what it was that it was in like relation to.
I think it was after Reholder Gate. I think he kind of came out and he said something with regards to that, but it was just like this post felt very out of touch, felt very like devoid of bedside manner and collector sensitivity. And because I remember making a video about it, and it's just so funny that like every time Steve does show up, it seems to be in some just massive own goal.
And they pinned it too, which was pretty funny. They've unpinned it now. It's like it's deep down. But like when I saw it pinned at the top, I was like, why? Why are you pinning this?
Steve was so proud of it when he put it out. But Steve's obviously in a position where no one's going to tell him no, right? Like he's just going to be like, this is great. And everyone's going to be like, yeah, all right, I'll post it. It's my job to do what you say,
I got to ask you guys this. In my opinion, this has to be the case. But like Steve was on some personal vendetta with this post, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of ego in that one. That was like, I'm gonna put my junk on the table right here. And it was just like, there's a time and a place, man, and you don't have to kick them while they're down. Like everyone already knew that they were gonna die a slow death. It ended up happening faster than anticipated. You don't have to do this, But a lot of it was him saying, now, if any of you guys, without saying it, a lot of it was like, now, if any of you guys are considering going to PSA, you got to consider the longevity that we've had at a brand and get them over here. He was also taking the opportunity before putting out the promo to just step in and be like, look over here, guys, before PSA drops their inevitable promo to get some of the CBCS books coming in. But it just could have been played in a more tasteful way. But again, I'm with Lawrence. I'm glad that he did it this way because, damn, that comment section was fucking great.
What's weird, because I feel like it's one thing if you're the top dog, if you're like Superman and you're taking out some incredibly, powerful opponent, your arch nemesis, they're basically taking out somebody that was already dead, and then you're laughing about it and stepping on their head while they're drowning, type of thing. That's the irony of it. But the other thing I wanted to mention was the best comment that I saw in that section was like, I feel like this should have been an internal email instead of being posted. I thought that was perfect.
That's good. I didn't see that.
I wonder if it had anything to do with the banana post, like a year and a half ago.
I thought the same thing.
And it's like maybe they're just like, it's like F you guys.
Yeah.
So I mean, you never know. Like that could be something that was just like it's maybe sticking in your mind for a while, and you're like, got your chance.
Well, it's interesting. Whatever the reason for him to have posted it, it is interesting that he concerned himself with it and felt like he had to make a statement about it. And now, kind of like I already showed, we have CGC doing a post, offering 20% off crossover submissions. And I guess my ultimate question is like, I know we kind of joke about how like nobody has used CBCS, and, even with PSA, they released their population report and it's nowhere even close to like the amount of volume that CGC gets on like a weekly, monthly, quarterly basis. But the fact that they're offering this promotion, doesn't that say something? Like, are they actually concerned about losing, albeit what is maybe a small customer base for CBCS, and having PSA, get some acquisition for customers? Or are they just kind of doing this because this is a gift, as they see it, to the collecting hobby?
I mean, why even let your opponent get a foothold? Like, if you can get any of those people over, like, do it. Like, I don't really see any downside.
I think the other part of it is there are quite a few CBCS books out there already. Like, there was a time where CBCS was more popular than it is now. And I think it's a big part of it is just right now, collectors are thinking, what does this mean for our CBCS products, right? Does this devalue them, so on and so forth? And we've had these conversations before. First of all, promotion to capture the crossovers, we've talked about that. Like, that's an obvious thing that has to happen. And in terms of, there was a conversation we had, Lawrence, I believe you were with us. I think so. It was like a year-end conversation. Maybe you were, but you've been with us a few times. And there was one bit where we were talking about if CGC goes to zero. And I remember saying if CGC goes to zero, it doesn't matter, because the things that are in the slab, if you slabbed things worth slabbing, that's what's special, right? Yes, we do put a premium on things because they're grades and they're encapsulation, of course, but you don't lose all value because the item is what's valuable, right? And so on and so forth. And the same can be said for the things that are slabbed in CBCS books. Now, on the open market, CBCS already sold for a decent percent less than CGC. And a few people messaged and asked, what is this going to mean for the books? Like, is this going to make them like a rarer thing and they go up in value? No, I do not think so. Is this going to mean that they might go down more in value? Perhaps, right? Because going forward, you won't have uniformity in your collection, because you won't be able to encapsulate in that. And, it's kind of like, why buy a product from a company that no longer exists? That psychology is an interesting one. And so they may go down a bit more in value or sell for a little bit less than they have, but the items inside are still valuable. So the question becomes, well, if you are going to cross these over, which company are you going to go with? And even if it's not about taking over the market share of the few people that do submit to CBCS, I think it's more about, well, these tens of thousands of CBCS books, thousands of them are about to get resubmitted somewhere. Who's going to get those? I think that's the immediate conversation. That's what I think the promo's for.
And one way to really look at that too, because when you did have all three of them that were out there, I used to do some videos where I was comparing the top sales on the week between PSA, CBCS, and CGC books. And the prices of the books that sold was always, PSA was the lowest. It would be like books between $100 and maybe like $1,100. Then the CBCS books were like $1,500 to maybe $4,000, and then the CGC books were generally like $8,000 to $30,000 or $40,000 on those top books. This was on eBay. And so what it shows you is that CBCS does have a large block still of those like higher dollar vintage books that exist. And PSA doesn't have many books like that are graded, and they may want to grab those, because that's what starts to give you a little more, I don't know, I'd say like notoriety, is when you start getting some of those like higher end books. And so CGC probably wants those inside, on their census. And there are, I don't know if it ever got cross-graded again, but like there are some big books in CBCS cases. Like I think the Mile High Suspense 3 was a CBCS. And so like, it's like a 9.6 or something like that. And so like, there are some big books over there, and whatever company it is, they will want those books in their cases. And I mean, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that ultimately plays out, like where people go.
Yeah.
Can I add a little footnote to that? Something that I think is maybe interesting and worth saying is that PSA had actually acquired Wata Games, which Wata was one of the big video game grading companies. And it's important to point out that if you go to PSA's pop report to look for video games, it is Wata Games as well. Like that is just now the ubiquitous population report, even if it is still in a Wata slab in theory.
That's interesting.
So one thing that is very interesting about this acquisition, and could be what I would assume is a big project going on over there, is like, a lot of people have complained about CBCS's census and stuff. It was terrible. Like it was like really bad navigation, like brutal. Just all over the place. Like I would imagine that might be the big project that they're doing right now is like, let's get all this data, let's get all this information, let's port it over to our website, let's flood our pop report. And then Ryan, to what you're saying, it's just automatically going to show up as like, hey, the Suspense 3 is on the PSA pop report, just like instantly like that.
Swag,
So
that's a big
that's kind of
deal.
an interesting thing.
That's
But hold on a second.
Yeah.
Is every on that PSA pop report with the WADA games, are they labeled as WADA like in the
Good
report, or
question.
is they labeled that?
Because don't they grade differently? Because didn't WADA use like a different grading standard, or did they use the?
No, whatever they've done, they've merged it.
Yeah,
you know
they
what?
merged it for the video games. No, they did.
Yeah, I don't want to speak. I don't want to speak like I'm an expert on this. I just know because I had been looking at it, and it is the case that like it may be when you click into an individual item, like or you put up the cert number, it will show you that it's WADA or PSA or whatever. But as far as like the population report is concerned, when you just kind of look up like how many Super Mario Brothers are graded, it'll just tell you, 1,000 or something like that, and that's just both of the companies.
Yeah, that could be really interesting. That could really juice their pop report like without a whole lot of work.
Yeah. I'm not sure. I was going to say, I'm not sure I like that too much. I'm not sure I like that too much unless there's a label on that pop report saying this is a CBCS graded book, like, without having to go into the actual book to see that, because it's a little misleading, in my opinion, if you're a comic collector going to look at and look up, certain book numbers and stuff like that. So I'm not sure.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
You're definitely not wrong. But I could say that you could look at it as like it's a benefit if you feel like CBCS's pop report has been lacking to where like. A lot of people you could argue like we don't even know like what the real censuses are because we haven't gotten the CBCS numbers.
Well, the reason I was excited when you said that is because just from PSA's perspective, the benefit, if there is no labeling, is just that you end up immediately, like what Lawrence is citing as from the collector's perspective, somewhat misleading. I'm looking at the moment, and I'm going to look at it from Lawrence's perspective too, because I do agree with that. From the company's perspective, like, wow, we just immediately have this robust population report, and for someone that doesn't know what just went on behind the scenes, they could be searching a book and it gives the impression that PSA has been rocking and rolling grading certain titles, right? And it creates this confidence, and that's exactly what Lawrence is looking at from the other perspective of, well, as a collector, I want to know if that was graded recently as PSA entered comic books or 20 years ago when it was, everything that CBCS had been doing, just for the sake of the integrity of the truth, right? In that regard. But
I agree with that. But like one really positive thing about that would be that we have not had any visibility really into the CBCS pop report forever. And so like if they could actually get that data and make it usable, that would be very cool to be able to see like what those numbers actually are, to see how things, to get a more full picture, you know, like how many ASM 300s are really graded, is it like 60,000 or something or 50,000 or what? And so, yeah, I think that'd be pretty cool, even though I agree it would be a little weird when it's combined.
Sure. But Ryan, tell me, so I don't think I've spent much time at all on a CBCS pop report. I remember I looked around a little bit because somebody told me that you can actually see who signed books. And
it had better detail that you could dig through, but like you would click on something and it would be like 4 minutes later, a page would load and you're like, oh my God, this is brutal. And so I just remember it was really tough to use.
Okay, got it. So it was there though. It just wasn't
theoretically.
Okay, I see. I'm with you.
It's like CGC, like you go quick to it, you look up a book, you see it, and so it's there. But like, how often do you want to sit and wait for something to load and then have it time out or whatever? And like, so I mean, and then when something's doing that, you don't necessarily trust it. So, but I imagine they have to have the data at least, and so that would be if they can leverage that would be, I think, a positive.
Yeah. But yeah, okay. So now I'm really curious about that pop. I want to know if they do get merged, is there going to be something that says this is from previously a CBCS graded book? That's interesting. I'm going to be following that.
I think my guess would be that if you get into the actual cert number, it'll tell you if it's a PSA or CBCS.
Right.
However, if you were just to look up ASM 300, you're just going to see 10,000. That's all you're going to see.
That's fair.
So,
yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Well, I have a question. I have one more question before we go further. How about if a book that is going to be crossover graded now, let's say somebody's going to send a CBCS book over to PSA, are they going to remove that from the CBCS census and put it over on PSA census, pop report?
I would think they probably would if they have, like, if they've got the data, but I mean, going to CGC, no.
Yeah, that's my point.
Yeah.
But I mean, we all know that, though, that these pop reports are, they're good, but they're not perfect. Like, especially when you get to like certain points with books, like where it's like, I bet like how many 9/6s of different keys have been cracked out to go for 9/8s. I bet 9/6 numbers are massively inflated, you know, for a lot of like bronze and copper keys. And so it's like that kind of stuff. Like, I imagine like there's certain numbers you can really trust and they give you a good idea of where things are at. But yeah, that I think we just all know that there's some squishiness in the pop report numbers.
Before I kind of ask Manu, you know, some other stuff about, you know, if we got any additional information out of PSA, I kind of wanted to ask you guys on the panel and revisit something that was touched on with the values of the CBCS slabs. You know, do you guys currently have any CBCS books? And if you did this motivate you at all to cross them over more so than, say, 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago? And on top of that, just to add to that story, you know, I definitely got a lot of people who made comments in my video when I talked about this and mentioned like cross grading. A lot of people were like, "Oh, that would be ridiculous. Why even bother doing that whole thing?" Yet privately, I heard from a lot of people that were like, "Oh, like, you know, hey, I guess I'm going to pull out my thing," or like, you know, it could just be all talk, but certainly people are thinking about it. I guess, you know, I'll just throw it back to you guys at that. Like, do you have any CBCS books, and what do you think is really going to happen? Like, do you think that there's going to be a large amount of people that cross grade to either company?
So I do not own any anymore. I think I've sold my final one maybe like 2 or 3 months ago or 4 months ago, or it wasn't as a result of like CBCS going. It was a book that I had for sale and it finally sold. I don't think prices are going to drop much more on them because the reality is that the prices were already at a point where it kind of like you would, if you bought it, you would cross it over and whatever your gain or loss would be probably gets eaten up by that grading cost. You know, that's often how it worked. So like maybe it gets a little cheaper just because it's a little harder to sell them. I imagine the demand will drop even more, but I think there's going to be very little difference in price on the CBCS books. But I think most people that have them are probably just going to keep them until they decide to sell. I think unless you're deciding to sell it, you're probably just going to not bother and you'll keep it in the case. There's going to be some exceptions. I mean, we've talked to a couple of people that we know are talking about doing the cross grading. Like they're tempted by the 20% discount, especially on big books. Like that can be a big deal. And it's a lot cheaper than dealing with like paying for a walkthrough, you know, submission where you're paying 4% of value. So that's the plus. But yeah. I do think that, and I said this on a recent video, my biggest concern is I do not trust that they don't carry the label through the process. And if you think that your book is a 7.5 and it's in a 7.0 CBCS label, you're not getting a 7.5. I don't care what anybody tells me. They're going to give you a 7.0 max. Like they're not, I just don't think it's going to happen. I think that's going to get in the mind of the grader and they just won't do it. But that's my opinion on it.
Well, I think to that I want to say, well, actually I want to talk. Sorry, Lawrence, you go ahead. I got a little bit to spit out here. I'll catch up with you in a minute.
Plain and simple, what's the incentive? 20%. All right. Unless you're a completionist, like you have to have everything under one company and maybe you have a few CBCS you want to like kind of merge into CGC or PSA, whatever it is. Why spend the money? I think Ryan hit it on the head. If you're going to sell your collection or you really want to, you know, give it a greater value to your book, maybe you do that. But where I really see this benefiting are dealers, right? Dealers who own CBCS books, maybe they're tired of people trying to lowball them on CBCS books. Let me use the crossover grading thing that's going to happen right now, save myself 20%. And now it's easier, you know, for me to get a better price for that book. That's where I see it that's who I see it benefiting the most.
And from what I heard, that 20% is on top of whatever CGC discount you have for your account. So if you're a dealer, you've got 25% off, and then you get another 20% off. So
That's worth it.
Really cheap.
Yeah. Well, that kind of sets it up nicely, you know, to the dealer aspect. But Manu, I mean, have you got any word on the streets of PSA, what they're doing right now? If are they going to be offering any, you know, compensations or any new info from them kind of swallowing up CBCS here?
Yeah, a little bit. And we'll be hearing a bunch more. And I'll talk specifically about some of like the case stuff, like my opinions on that. But there were some questions that I wanted to ask them, that we wanted to ask them, and there were some things that they could share. But one thing that was interesting is because, you know, and I think it was Neo that might have said, like, you know, does the Beckett office just literally get like a PSA label hung on it, you know, and everyone's still working, so on and so forth. And I can't speak to staffing and certain positions and things like that, or even career opportunities. But I was told that all comic book grading is, at least for the, you know, for the foreseeable future, is going to remain in Santa Ana. So, because there was some thinking like, yo, are they just going to use that facility and do some comic book grading there as well? But no, all of the comic book grading is going to remain in Santa Ana. And then, you know, I saw the CGC promo hit, and I was like, the PSA promo should have been out already, because obviously it's coming, right? And so there is a PSA promo coming, and they wanted to take their time with it, and I hope they do a really great one. I don't have any info on what that is. I hope it's dope. And Dan Gomez over at PSA, he handles biz dev and a lot of relationships and a lot of marketing stuff. He has actively been reaching out to CBCS dealers and kind of inviting them over to PSA, right? And letting them know that what he has to offer and what PSA has to offer, and how they could just smoothly transition over from their customers that were previously they were facilitating CBCS submissions for them, just move it over to PSA submissions. And some of the things at Beckett are going to remain with Beckett, though. I think that's important to know. Like, the Beckett card grading is still Beckett card grading, and the people that they've been dealing with there are still going to be those same folks. And the manga grading, which has been a really big hit recently in terms of like everyone.
We're going to talk about that later on in the show,
yeah,
for sure.
So, and that's staying as a Beckett, you know, encapsulated item. But the comic book grading, yes, is now going to be PSA, but it is all still happening in Santa Ana. Dealers are being onboarded to PSA, and a promo is coming as well. Do you think they should have got a promo out immediately? What do you think there? I kind of wish they would have.
It should have been. It should have been the same time as the announcement. They shouldn't have done.
Literally.
You have till April 17th. It should have been, we're cutting it off.
Yeah.
You can cross over to PSA for this discount or whatever.
I hear you.
Yeah.
I hear you.
Honestly, my speculation is that, like, you know, because Rob had said this, you know, when they acquired SGC, there was no promo to cross over to PSA if you had SGC cards. So
yeah.
I think that their thought was probably like, we're not going to offer a promo. But I think CGC offering a promo, in my opinion, seems like that kind of forces their hand a little bit, or at least
agree.
You know, makes them think that they would have to do it.
Yeah, and I mean, in anyway, yes, and we'll just wait for the promo to come out, and then we'll speak more about that. But now, in the weeds a little bit about the idea of crossing over books. There are some really interesting things to think about here. Like, for instance, if you have a pricey book and it's already encapsulated, and I'm just having these thoughts out loud, but I think they're real. If it's already encapsulated as a CBCS book, and it's in one of CBCS's even more recent cases, which are like really high quality products, and you're considering, oh, CBCS is gone, what's the value of my item? I think I want to put this in a CGC slab. The CGC slab, I mean, why would I be shy about saying it now, is an inferior product to the CBCS slab in terms of like quality, in my opinion, from what I've handled and from what I've experienced. And so, like, there might be brand value. No, not might be. There's absolutely a premium for the CGC product over the CBCS. The brand value exists. But when you have this book, let's just say it's 15,000, 20,000, whatever, relative, right? Whatever. You have to ship it now. There's risk in shipping. It has to get handled again. And then it's going into literally an inferior product where it can get damaged on its way back to you. It's going to crack open more easily, so on and so forth. So I think that's something to think about. But obviously you have choices. Your CBCS book doesn't have to go to CGC. You could decide to send it to PSA. And PSA is, working on its brand value over time as well. So maybe you make that decision. And then just the risk in shipping, right? Just the idea of crossing over a book, you have to decide if you're going to ship an encapsulated book unnecessarily. Most people think shipping an encapsulated book is foolproof. It isn't, but that's fine. And then the other thing that I wanted to say to what Ryan said, that's interesting. Ryan said that if you cross over a 7.0, don't think that CGC is not paying attention to it came in as a 7.0. Now, I can't speak to that, but I think it's interesting that Ryan said that, and that he thinks that there's no chance that it's going to get a higher grade. And someone keep me honest here, I don't believe CGC offers a crossover with a minimum grade option, but PSA as an option, PSA obviously allows for crossovers, but they also have that other add-on, which is a minimum grade requirement, where if you do send the 7.0 and you're like, well, I don't want this crossed over unless, because I think it's a 7.5, so I don't want it crossed over unless you think it's a 7.5. Right. And so if they don't agree, they'll just send it back.
Now, I
to
will
you
say
like
on that, though, I can't speak so much to the comic side, but
Yeah.
on the card side, it is widely known that those crossover attempts, you get maybe 10%.
Yeah.
Like
No, it's
PSA
tough.
just knocks them down all the time.
Yeah, cards
so,
are tough.
like there was a video recently done by oh my god, what's his name? The guy that did the card regrading thing. He did an attempt to cross over to PSA as well, and I think he submitted like 10 cards or something, and one of them came back, and I think it still came back lower. He was just like willing to accept a lower grade. So that's why, like, the crossover, when you're trying to, that's why I think, like, whether they will tell you or not, I think the graders just, it's too hard to see a grade in front of your face and not have that influence you. It's going to, and to think that your product is better and all of that, and to the whole, like, because I got to speak as the resident CGC shell, I got to speak to the CGC stuff too. Like, I fully agree that the CGC cases are inferior, but I also think the PSA card cases are inferior to Beckett's, to BGS's, but PSA's, people still send a PSA because they sell for more. It's like, it's the same thing. It's like, ultimately, if you are like, if it comes to me, if it comes down, if you are selling your book, you pick the one that is going to get you the most money. If you're just keeping it, like, there's no reason to even bother. Like, that's why I just keep it in the case.
CBCS then. Yeah.
Well,
And
yeah,
like
I
you
would
said,
just keep it in
until
CBCS.
it's time to
I
sell.
gotta
Yeah.
hold on. I know you guys have been talking about this, and Ryan, you mentioned it already, but I got to double click on this because, like, my brain is slow and it's just hitting me. Why would CGC or whoever, when they get a cross grade thing, not want to bump a grade or recognize that the other grading company graded harder? Wouldn't that just be like a total incentivizing every single person to be like, oh shoot, like, they grade easier at CGC, I can bump my stuff, I'm going to cross grade everything I have? Like, why would they do that?
Historically, that's not how it works. Like, it's just like, people that try to cross grade end up with the same or lower. And I just think it just comes down to it's not thinking about the money side of it. I think I don't think the graders are thinking that. I personally don't think that that's going through the graders' mind, that, like, oh, we can get an extra, percentage point out of it. I don't think that's crossing their mind. I think it's probably more so there's no way this company graded harsher than us. That it's like that type of mentality.
Say for Teapot's video that disproved everything when it comes to cross grading, collectibles. It makes sense that you're always going to, in theory, get the same grade or lower whenever you send in a cross grade, because presumably it was graded correctly the first time, so the grade is the grade, and then it has the chance to get lower because it could have been damaged while it sits in the case, or the corners could have been bumped, it could have been damaged in shipping, someone could have dropped the case over the years in which it's been slabbed. Like, that just makes sense to me, I guess, intuitively. But
one thing, this is related, this is interesting, and people can add their experiences to this. And I could have had success, and we might have talked about this on air before, I'm not sure, but I could have had success with this because, the books that I'm sending in to do this with, I'm identifying the opportunity for a bump, or I'm identifying that they were harsher graded. So I'm anticipating the results that I did get. I'll get to the point. So maybe that's why it's worked in my favor. It might not be some sort of, like, loophole or
But are you
conspiracy.
cracking them out and
No,
then
no,
resubbing?
but no. But what I'm talking about specifically is a CGC book going back to CGC, but also getting added the CGC pressing as an option. Meaning,
Yeah, so yeah, I'm not talking like if you add pressing in, it's like it's a whole nother story because then
but,
it's
right. And so, but what I want to say is, I've had such tremendous success with that. And so have everybody that I know that does it and does it with a detail oriented sort of like view, that I start to think that, and this is just, I guess, what do we call it? Tinfoil stuff. If you have a 9.2, 9.4, 9.6, and you think it's a 9.8, and it has, it has what it takes to be a 9.8, or let's just say one bump, a 9.6 to a 9.8, and you send that thing back to CGC, and you leave the sticky note on it pointing out where you think the pressable defect is, and then you pay for it to get pressed. For me, it has always come back the higher grade. And for some of my friends, it has always come back the higher grade. Do you think that that's just like pay to play? Or
I don't know. I don't think so because I've seen plenty of videos where people have sent in books that they thought would get higher and they come back like with CCS pressing.
Mhm.
I think it's I am well aware that you have a very sharp eye, and I think that is probably plays a much bigger role than just like paying to have CCS do it. Because like there's plenty of times where you see people like they're like, oh, but I got the book pressed, and it's like it doesn't matter if it's a flaw that can't be pressed out, So I do think that it comes down a lot to the submitter's eye.
Well, the sticky note thing will have to be another conversation. We'll table that.
Sure,
But Lawrence,
sure.
I want to get you back involved here before we kind of keep it rolling.
No, it's all good. I had a thought when you guys mentioned big books that are in CBCS cases. So if there's like, I know right now there's a Marvel Comics 1 that was signed by somebody that was in New York Comic Con a couple of years ago, and when they had the new labels come out. So I know there's a massive book already. What's the incentive for somebody who owns that book to go and say, let me cross over this book? I mean, that's a crazy amount of money that they got to spend just to have, this crossover. So like, unless they're maybe sending the book to Heritage, and Heritage is telling them, like, let's get this out of this case. You'll get it, more money when we sell the book. What's the incentive for those, big books out there for them to cross over? I don't think much. If I'm PSA or if I'm CGC and I know there's a big book out there with a CBCS label on it, I'm approaching that person and say, listen, let's get this into our case, and we'll kind of work a backdoor deal. I know that's not what everybody wants to hear, but I know things like that happen.
Yeah, big books are a different story. Yeah, I've talked to a lot of people where there's a lot of like, there's conversations that happen.
Yeah, there's definitely conversations. There's definitely like, and you already made the point, Lawrence. Like if it goes to a Heritage Auctions or something like that, they're going to be already making the phone calls and stuff. And then CGC might even do it for free because they want to have like this huge Marvel Comics, highest rated or whatever in their thing. So that stuff happens. The only other little thing I'll add before we kind of like, wrap everything up is like, yeah, there's not much motivation unless you're going to go sell a book to like get it cross-graded. However, like I'll take somebody like me, like, I submit to CGC maybe like once or twice a year, and I don't currently have any CBCS books, but if I did have a CBCS book and I was like gearing up for my next, like my annual CGC submission, I might just like now think to myself, oh, hey, now that this company's gone, I guess this is as good a time as any to just like throw this one in the pile and send it in. Whereas like if CBCS was still up and running, I may not have that same inclination. I don't know, but that's just my own little 2 cents as like a non-full-time dealer collector, maybe perspective of why you might decide to cross-grade it.
Yeah, I think it
Makes sense.
Yeah. Well, with that, guys, I mean, shout out to CBCS. They were a big part of the hobby for a time, and now we are on to 2, and it's very interesting the power vacuum that they leave here, what that means for comic books moving forward. And I gotta say, I mean, I'm liking it. I'm liking if PSA is going to announce, hey, we're doing a 20%, or 22% promotion too, on the heels of CGC doing a promotion. I think it's going to be fun, and the grading wars have just begun.
Yeah.
But before we move on to our next topic, we got to do a quick shout out to the sponsor of today's stream. Guys, we are sponsored by Heritage Auctions. Now, I don't need to introduce Heritage Auctions to you guys, but in case you don't know who they are, Heritage Auctions is one of the most trusted auction houses in the world, known for their record-breaking sales in comics, collectibles, and original art. But it's also a great place to get great deals all the time, especially with their weekly auctions that happen every single week. If you go to the link in the description, guys, you'll be navigated to this Heritage page right here. And if you scroll down, you can click on this link, browse our latest auctions, and they got all kinds of stuff. I mean, they got big books coming up always for sale. They got original art. They got trading cards. But the one thing that I really like is that every Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, they have a weekly auction. You know, today's Saturday. Tomorrow, they're going to be doing their Sunday version of that auction. You know, they do it by Golden Age on Sunday, Silver Age on Monday, and Bronze Age on Tuesday. And, 22 hours left. But, I thought we could hop over to the auction right now and see kind of what's going on. You see all these great books. And I got a question for you, Ryan. I was looking through and I was kind of seeing what kind of goodies were up for auction. I noticed this one right here. You got a Detective Comics number 140, first appearance of the Riddler, Golden Age appearance of the Riddler, so the actual first appearance. But this one's an incomplete book. And next to it, you got a Tech 225 3.0. This is the first appearance of Martian Manhunter. I'm not saying that they're like in value, but what are you thinking here? What could be a better opportunity?
I mean, so not that I like to give away like my tips for how I like the stuff that I buy, but I do personally like to hunt for raw books on Heritage. So I would, even though it's a poor, and I'm assuming they have that meaning it's incomplete. It could be something else. I've seen them give books poor ratings when they're complete before, which I mean, that's where you can get some deal. Like my Batman 9 that I bought like 5 years ago on Heritage was a poor, and it came back a 2. So it's like you never know. It had a ton of water damage, and they graded it lower than what it ended up being. So I like to hunt the raw side of things, and all
right.
And personally, for those 2 books, I'd rather not talk about that. That's definitely one that I was watching for Sunday. So, but yeah, I'm
glad we were able to put it up last.
First appearance of the Riddler, he's on the cover and everything. I mean, Martian Manhunter's cool, but he's you don't have the cover appearance.
Well, I'll say this, if you guys make an account with Heritage Auctions, which you can do, you can go up in here, you can look at their auctions, and you can hit track the item. Never mind. Hold on a second. It logged me out, guys. I'm going to log back in really quick.
We got his account.
And
Screen capture.
We're going to do this. We're going to get this back in order, but you can log into your account, scroll down, and hit track. And that way you can ruin all the books that Ryan is trying to snipe. But Ryan, I got another one for you here. Everybody loves a good horror comic book. Here we have 2 Haunt of Fears, Haunt of Fear number 15 and Haunt of Fear number 26. Sometimes there's good opportunities to pick up these types of EC books in raw form, and then maybe get a nice copy and get it graded. But which one do you like here more? I think these are both done by.
I think they're both Graham Ingalls. Like they look like his style. So let me see the other one again, real quick. Let me see the other one. Yeah, they're both actually really similar, like a similar layout. But I'm going with one that looks kind of like Vampire. I think
that one's kind of dope.
Yeah, I like the red.
Oh, wait, this one right
I'm
here.
a fan. Yeah, no, the other one where it's like he's coming out of the coffin. Yeah.
I like
maybe
that.
It's just a zombie dead guy, but yeah, I like that one.
All right, we're going to add that one to the tracking one. Now, let me kick it over to Lawrence here. Lawrence, I kind of identify you as like a Fantastic Four guy. I don't know why, but like I just feel like you probably have an FF1. And I was just over on the Fantastic Four section. This is on Monday. We got 2 villain specs right here. FF18, first Super Scroll, the villain of that show that will not be named. And then Fantastic Four 19, Ramatut. Is it too late for Ramatut? I mean, which one are you going here? Bird in the hand versus maybe 2 in a bush.
I mean, they've done, the Super Scroll thing already. Ramatut, obviously, we saw them at the end of, him appear at the end of Ant-Man, but I'm still going Ramatut here. That to me, I like that cover better. That's to me, like, that's a better cover than I think the Super Scroll cover. And I don't see it as often. I feel like I always see that Super Scroll every time I'm around at shows, at my LCS. I rarely see that Ramatut, so I'm going there.
Man, that post credit scene was the worst.
Yeah.
It was so bad.
Yeah. All right. Well, let me ask this too. A couple books that have kind of fallen off, and we're actually going to talk a little bit about how values might be bouncing back. But we have an FF 48, of course, the first full appearance of the Silver Surfer here, in a 4.5 with white pages. But then we got a 6.0, FF 52, first Black Panther. I think these are probably similar in value based on the fact that this is a slightly higher grade. But what do you kind of think is a better opportunity here to kind of bounce back?
I think, was that for a general question?
Lawrence. It's for Lawrence still.
Oh, okay. For me, I'm picking the bigger first appearance. To me, that's Silver Surfer. I'd rather own that book than first Black Panther. If I'm going to pick, I think Silver Surfer has a chance, but it's just so many freaking copies of both of those books out there. I want to own them both, but at the same time, if I had to pick of one I want to own for the longer term, it's definitely Silver Surfer.
All right, Silver Surfer. Okay, and then on Tuesday, we have our Copper and Bronze Age. I'm going to look at Manu with this one right here. Okay. Starting at the top, we got a ASM 252 first black suit. It's a 9.0. White pages, but it's not very expensive, or probably won't finish very expensive newsstand copy compared to ASM 361 9.6 first Carnage. I think these are very similar, very affordable, cool books. Which one are you going with here?
Dude, that's so interesting, actually. And I'm actually surprised by my answer. I think I would prefer a 9.0 newsstand of 252 over a 361 direct 9.6, to be honest.
Oh, very interesting. Okay, okay. And then
I love both of those books, by the way, but I think that's what my preference would be, not knowing values of those two right at the moment.
They got a bunch of auctions, and I know that this answer is probably going to be pretty easy, but I feel like we have to talk about it, and maybe you can add some color commentary here. But we got a Spider-Man 1 Gold Edition signed by Todd. Not the full Todd, T. McFarlane, T. Versus this one here, JSA authenticated Spider-Man 1. And I don't know if you can spot the signature, but
I see
it is there. It's in the same.
Looks like it's also on Spider-Man's crotch, but in gray.
Yes.
Yeah.
But what do you go with here?
I'd go gold with the white just because it just pops better. I like the fact that it's witnessed and not JSA. Not that that JSA signature is probably legitimate, right? I've seen that sort of McFarlane signature before. But I love the way the white pops on it. I like what it does for Spidey's eyes. I could see the signature. I'd go that one.
Yeah, very, very good choice. Well, guys, gentlemen, if you guys want an opportunity to pick up a great book, a big grail, make sure you head on over to Heritage Auctions, link in the description. I want to say thank you to Heritage to sponsoring our stream today. We really, really appreciate it. And you guys would help us out a lot if you go into the link in the description and check out some auctions, maybe win some cool books right there. All right, let's kind of head on over now to our next topic. And this one's kind of an interesting one because I feel like this was a story that when it was announced, I didn't really think too much of it, but then I saw a lot of people talking about it. And actually, Lawrence, I'm glad you're here because you were one of the ones that DM'd me about this. But Torpedo Comics put out a post talking about how that they are going to stop doing new comic books. I'm not going to read their entire post, but in case you guys don't know, Torpedo is one of the, big comic book LCS stores in the nation. They have many locations, both in Las Vegas and also in California. Famously, it was a store opened up by John Dolomane, who's the drummer for System of a Down. But they have, a lot of back issues. They have a lot of new comic books, but they recently announced that they're not going to be doing new comic books anymore. And I saw a lot of people talking about this. They kind of thought that this was like a big, interesting story, especially considering the fact that we've had such an explosion of like new comic success. Like every week there's Image Comics selling out. Dork is hot. White Sky's hot. Everybody is kind of specking on this stuff. But you sent this to me actually, Lawrence, the story and kind of, posed the question, about like, what do you sort of make of this? Like we had a little bit of a conversation, but maybe you can kind of, recycle your thoughts here and we can talk it out loud together. But what did you kind of make of this story when you saw it? And what do you kind of make of it now, a week later?
I was just really shocked. I mean, like you said, like we talked about a little bit, like everybody's saying how great new comic books are right now, especially with the absolute runs, all the characters. I was really shocked to hear that they would not be selling new comic books every day. And not only that, I'm hearing other collectors as well saying like how great new comic books are right now. And I hear it from my LCS I'm very friendly with them, saying that, you know, so many great stories are coming out. So one of the biggest comic shops there is in the United States to no longer carry new comic books, I was absolutely floored. It made me worry a little bit. I'm not going to lie. Are things not as good as people think? But I'm going to flip it over and say, you know, on Torpedo side, they must be doing pretty good on back issues and vintage books for them to be able to do this. So is vintage picking up, and maybe, you know, the newer books are kind of holding them back? But, you know, as far as the business aspect of new books and what they pay and what they have to buy every week, you know, I'm not privy to that, but there's a big question in my mind that's saying, is it more on Torpedo's end, where they saying it's a business decision for them, or are things not as good as people are saying for new comic books? That's what went through my head when this first story came out.
Yeah, definitely have thoughts. But Ryan, I've been new. I know you guys aren't like super into the new stuff, but like, did you guys kind of have thoughts on this one?
Well, I mean, at the risk of losing potentially a future Torpedo sponsorship, my general feeling is that they are pretty well known for pricing their back issues very high. And so I imagine that they make a big margin on those books, and on new comic books, you have almost no margin. You make, like, from what I understand, you make very, very little, and you have to deal with people that don't come and pick up their subscriptions and everything. And, you know, and so you get rid of that hassle. And so for most LCSs where maybe they rely on that margin that they get from new comic books, it's fine. But with a place like Torpedo that, you know, they're like, especially like their Vegas locations and everything, like they are a destination. People like going to like, oh, I bought a book from Torpedo, you know, and they don't really care that they overpaid by 100%, you know? And so that I feel like that is probably very specific to a location like that. I could see a location like Mile High Comics doing that. You know, I don't know if they offer new comic books. They probably do, but I have no idea. I mean, I was honestly like, when I heard the story, I was like, I'm shocked Torpedo offers that option anyway. Like, I couldn't believe they actually had pull lists for people. So, I mean, that's kind of what I think. I think that there's no way you can't mark up the new books. You know, like it's like people are getting them in their pull list and they're getting them at that price. And whereas like back issues, you have such a big margin that they could get off of them. So I think that's probably all that it really comes down to.
Yeah.
I don't have anything worthwhile to say on this one. So I love what you guys have said.
One thing I want to add though, I don't know if you know, you noticed they've also had like a store-wide sale, like 30% off, I think the entire store or whatever it is. So I don't know. Ryan might be right.
Insert joke here.
Yeah.
People talk about that with Mile High too. They're like, oh, they had 50% off sale, so now it's only 30%.
It is interesting to think about. Well, it's interesting to think about, you know, in terms of like why they're making this decision. I mean, honestly, we won't know. I thought it was worth bringing up because not just with Lawrence, you know, us talking about it, like I saw like Facebook posts talking about it. I saw other people in other conversations, you know, having the discussion. And I think that there's definitely something to the fact that, like, you know, new comic books for the most part is kind of a winner take all kind of industry. Like, I just don't think that there's that many comic stores that can thrive by selling new comic books. The margins are very low. Derek pointed this out in the chat. It's very, it's kind of strangely, it is less predictable than back issues, which you would kind of think that like it'd be hard to kind of predict. Well, I'm just going to assume a new collection is going to show up and I'll have new back issues to sell. But you know, for however they happen, it does eventually show up, and you know the pricing is a little more clear. Like, as far as like, okay, like even if things crash, you know, I still know that an ASM 300 has value. I don't necessarily know if Dork issue number 3 is going to sell like Dork 1 did, you know, so it's very, very hard to predict that. So on the one hand, it doesn't surprise me that they're getting out of the game, but on the other hand, you know, you guys kind of already mentioned it. Maybe they're thinking that they want to go all in on back issues because I don't know if you guys caught it, but I recently did my video for the comic book index update. And one of my big takeaways, as the thumbnail kind of suggests right here, is no more crashing. You know, the values for copper, bronze, and silver, I'm not going to say are not, you know, have not officially turned the corner, because we don't really know. I mean, let's go another at least 6 months to 12 months to, before we make such a bold claim. But at the same time, it's looking pretty good. And Heritage actually had a recent, signature auction, or not a signature, but like a kind of a specialized auction where they had a lot of high value, high end grails that kind of sold pretty decently compared to recent sales. And so I kind of wanted to throw it to you guys, if you guys got a chance to see my video, or maybe just, outside of what I talked about, if you guys have just sort of felt like the values. Lawrence, I know that you always do like, the hot 10 lists and kind of do a little bit of market reporting in that sense, but have you noticed, like I noticed, values starting to at least find a bottom, so to speak?
Yeah, I'm an avid, GPA goer. I'm constantly looking at books, whether for myself or other people who message me and saying, hey, is this a good deal type of thing. So I'm always looking at grades. I'm looking at last sales. I'm looking at 90 days and so on and so forth. There's still a little bit of softness out there, especially, here and there. Like I recently looked up a Tales of Suspense 39 and like a 3.5, and like if you go look at the last sale on that grade, it's like $1,500 lower than the 90-day, but then you have like a 3.0, which is a half a grade lower, sold for $1,000 more than the 90-day average. So it's like, it's really all over the place. And like certain copies are selling well, certain are kind of underperforming, but I have seen a little bit of basing, and that's really what I call it. If you follow stocks at all and you follow stock charts, a little bit about that. That's what you kind of get when you have like a start of a new bull market, is like basing and just kind of leveling out. And you have a high, you have a low, you have a high, you have a low, and that's just how it goes. And I think we're in that period right now where like you're getting some wacky sales, but I feel like we're going to get a little bit of a turn the corner, as you say, really soon. Probably, I would think by the end of this year.
What do you think, Ryan or Manu?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll say like my actions, I feel like speak louder than anything I can say, and I've started hunting for books again that are not just Golden Age. Like I've started like going on eBay looking for deals on like silver, bronze, copper, that type of stuff, where like legitimately I have not bought anything in that era for like 3 years. I mean, it's just like, because it was just like, even if you bought it at a good price, if you didn't sell it immediately, you were fighting like the drop. And so you would be losing money. And so I wasn't buying anything in that era. It was just Golden Age and that's it. And so, but now I am buying books in those eras again. And so like, I guess like to me, like that should speak the loudest for what I can say. Is like, I can say everything and people might believe me or not, but I'm actually buying those books again. So to me, it does feel like we are getting down into that, like because I'll say, like, as someone who buys and sells, like, I don't need prices to go up. Like, I want prices to go up. That's great. You just want them to be stable, because then at least you can trust what you're buying. You can try to figure out what price to buy at, that it's profitable. But if you're constantly like catching that falling knife or trying to catch that falling knife, like it's brutal. And so, yeah, it does feel like there is some baselining and things are potentially even turning in some books. Like you are starting to see green arrows occasionally again on GPA when we have not seen green arrows in those eras for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of the green, I'm over here on Go Collect's index pricing guide, and you can kind of just look, this is over the past year. You can see that copper, bronze, and silver all have red right there in the middle line, which is basically, them showing the trend. And then if I go to past 6 months, okay, now we still have bronze and silver with red. And then past 3 months, now it's just silver, which has like 0.5. And then in the past month, basically all green, maybe red here in the copper. But I think that that's just in a snapshot is a little bit telling. I also think it's just crazy that modern comic books have performed better than everything else.
Modern's been doing great for like a couple years. Like that's the one.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, Golden Age has been like just like a little bit, like it's been flat to tiny bit up, but like the modern stuff has been the strongest market. It is actually pretty surprising to see.
Yeah. Well, it's been it's kind of crazy, when it comes to buying and a new fervor for that type of activity. And it has to be said that also, we just came off of a weekend that had a bunch of comic book cons where we had Planet Comic Con in Kansas City. We had C2E2 in Chicago. I myself was at WonderCon, which is in Anaheim, California. And it's interesting because I felt like where my experience personally was like I didn't really buy anything, and I'm not like super into the con buying experience. I got some pushback for what I said about it, but it's just me being honest. Other people said that buying and selling was great at those other Comic Cons, and it kind of like brought up an old topic that I thought. I had been seeing recently. I mean, this is a post from Reddit 5 months ago that said buying comics at a Comic Con. And this person was just kind of talking about the pain points of having to pay like a $90 ticket to go to a show, and then also like have to pay for parking, and also like hoping that dealers actually have decent prices on their books and things of that nature. And a lot of people was kind of validating that. And that was kind of my, talk about comic book cons. But I don't know. I just wanted to bring this up because I felt like it was an interesting topic, and it kind of ties into the fact that we had like this crazy con weekend. But what's your guys' thoughts of cons these days as far as like buying? And do you think that with these values turn the corner, like cons are going to be like a fervor again, and this whole year is going to be great? And are you guys motivated to go to them and buy there? Or I don't know. What's your thought these days on
only if dealers
cons
like
stuff?
price stuff reasonably, if the dealers are like, oh, prices are going up, so they reprice everything up higher again, and so, but like and I saw a lot of comments in like posts like this as well, and a lot of the people were saying it's like go to local cons, like the smaller ones, and that's what I do. Like I go to my local con usually like every couple months, and I buy stuff almost every time, and so it's like and it cost me $3 to get in. There's no charge for parking. Like it's nothing, and so that's I feel like more like what maybe people might want to look for if they're really hunting for comics. If you want the experience of seeing the creators getting signatures, all the spectacle that can come with some of the big cons, then yeah, you got to go and you got to pay. But buying might not be the easiest thing at those.
For me, like I'm with Ryan. Like I have a bunch of smaller shows like every month in my area, but we just had a yearly show, King Con, a month ago, and to me, it's always been one of my funner shows to go to because one, obviously, it's a social event, but if we're just talking about strictly buying comic books. A lot of the dealers that go to that show, I know, and their prices are relatively what they should be. So that's the biggest factor when you're going to a con. Obviously, if you're going to New York, you're going to San Diego, you're going to these monster cons, everything's through the roof for them. Not everyone, because there are plenty of dealers there that actually have, decent pricing, but that's what really makes the show. If you run into if you go to a big show and all the dealers are priced correctly, man, you will make a freaking killing. I remember I went to New York Comic Con a couple of years ago, and I when I was looking for my ASM run, I wanted to find like the filler books for cheap, even if they were bronze 70s Spider-Man books, even some of the Silver Age. If they're not keys, they shouldn't be crazily priced. So like I was able to pick up like 40 books at New York Comic Con for a really good deal at one vendor alone. So, I mean, the dealers are out there. They can be had at the shows right now. Do I think people are flocking back to them? I think there's a new level of people coming in saying, I want to start buying books again. I want to see what's out there. Obviously, there are certain things that are also taking off. Like when I was at the last show, there are people looking for Mark Jewelers. They're looking for error books. They're looking for obscure stuff, not just like mainstream books that you always see at every show. That's what more I'm seeing right now. Are people looking for something like diamonds in the rough?
I mean, I had somebody just comment on one of my videos that he said he's got all the books that he had wanted. He's built that collection, and now he's hunting for double covers. Like interesting things like that.
Yeah, that's very out of the playbook of Manu right there.
Right. Yeah, I've just enjoyed the overall sentiment. Oh, sorry, Swag. What were we saying?
Well, I know you don't, but for the sake of conversation, to bring you in, like con buying, never in the cards for you in the future.
No, it's not in the cards for me. But the overall sentiment, I'm a fan of. We've talked about it in previous shows. Like I think it's, I think there's a renewed energy, just like the guys are saying here. I think people are excited about stuff. They're buying stuff. They're hunting more stuff. People are, the collectors that have what they want, they still want to be collecting. It's not like, oh, I have it, I'm done. What are you supposed to do? Sit on your hands? So you increase the challenge. You go for the rarer version, the yada, all this. And it's happening and people are having a good time. So I'm loving the energy, loving the sentiment. And if that sends more people to cons just out of pure excitement, whether they buy or not, well, then great for cons. But I certainly agree about the local shows. That's completely different than going to like an SDCC. And you can definitely get deals there. You could connect on an intimate level with the vendor. You could establish a relationship with someone that you didn't know was a local comic book shop owner, so on and so forth. And those are always great experiences. And yeah, they're cheap to go to, and you could eat at your favorite place that you regularly go to right afterwards. So those kinds of things I will be going to, and some specialty events I will be going to, but the general cons, nah, I won't be.
Here's the one thing I think you just mentioned that like really is a great point, is like, if you go to a con where they just don't have comics anymore and they have other stuff that you're into, like toys or like cards, that to me is like where it really gets, gets you going. So if, like you said, we don't just collect one thing anymore, and if you have everything that you want, then you just kind of move on to the next thing. That's how our brain works. So I'm really finding myself going to cons like that where they have multiple things for me to enjoy.
Yeah, and that's a great reason to go, actually. And I've tried to convince myself to go for those reasons, but then I still convince myself that I want to avoid crowds, and so I never end up there, for the most part. But yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Swag, there's something that I want to hijack with, but I'll do it at the end. I just wanted to let you know that at the end, I'm going to jump in. I want to take us back to heritage for something, maybe like 5 to 10 minutes on a particular topic.
All right. Well, I look forward to that for sure. With that pause, for sure, we could actually just give a quick shout out. We got a couple of super chats here that we got to get through. Sorry, I didn't actually mean to be dismissive of it. I genuinely
private chat message incoming. Like, what the hell are you doing?
That was crazy. No, just
my bad. Let me try it again. No. That's no. Yeah. Take over the show. All right.
Thanks.
Hey, big shout out to Gordon69814 to become a YouTube channel member. I believe that's on someone else's channel. So shout out to them. Appreciate you, Gordon, on behalf of the panel here. Stony
Nice.
Maloney with $4.99 weekly show, and I'll make it rain. Damn,
man.
do we got to go
Thank you.
weekly? I mean, if we got Lawrence showing up, we can maybe go weekly. We got to get all these good voices in here. Amazing pop culture podcast for the $4.99 said, you all have powerful facial hair, but Swagglehouse is not wearing a hat. Thoughts? P.S. You guys adding Lawrence is quite powerful. I agree.
That's the funniest thing, though, because like when we were talking about this, I said that I was like, 4 beards. That might be too much.
Too many beards. Yeah, like God. I feel like I had to not wear a hat for that purpose, because it's like we already got the beards on, So big shout out to Hurton here with the $20 Canadian. Y'all need Mighty on all the shows going forward. Well, hopefully Mighty wants to come on the shows going forward. After this performance, he's going to be like, I don't want to talk to these guys.
These are all my friends popping in with the super chats, by the way, talking about me.
Nice.
Yeah.
And for anyone that doesn't know, Lawrence's family around. I mean, Lawrence knows that. Most people know that, but Lawrence's family around here. For anyone that doesn't know,
Lawrence is in the intro of our credit.
That's
roll.
right. 100%. Exactly. Yeah.
That was on purpose. And then shout out to Jay Knows the Way, 1462. Love your videos, Lawrence. The Lawrence fandom is showing up big today. We appreciate you guys for stopping by. We really definitely appreciate all the super chats. Thank you guys so much. All right. I kind of want to switch a little bit of gears here. And this is kind of like a little bit of a roundabout kind of story that I think, I'll be able to square it, but I think it's an interesting topic. Last episode, we talked about the Whatnot lawsuit. And Paul Lesko kind of leading them, being called an illegal gambling casino, online casino. Now, we don't really have any new updates out of that, but there's a sort of parallel story that I wanted to kind of bring up in case you guys weren't aware of it, that I think kind of dovetails into what might end up happening with Whatnot. But if you guys aren't aware, Valve has recently, the state of New York has recently come after Valve, accusing loot boxes of being illegal gambling. This is kind of like a interesting big story. If you guys don't know, loot boxes are rewards within video games that are kind of like a mystery box. If you do a certain thing in a game, you get this loot box. Maybe it gives you a skin, maybe it gives you a trophy, whatever, and people can pay money to open them. In the recent weeks, Valve has shot back and said that Valve fires back at New York lawsuit over loot boxes, says they're like magic cards or Labubu. So now Valve is citing Collectables as being a reference to loot box while this lawsuit is going on, while the Whatnot stuff is going on. Of course, we just recently had our Daredevil blind bags that came out, with shout out to this comment right here. Anybody get a chance to get that copy of the Daredevil mystery bag? They went click. I'm sure he blames all the influencers, because look at this guy and all of these people making videos of Daredevil blind bag openings. I'm going to table there. I just thought that was kind of funny and a little bit relevant to the Daredevil blind bags. But guys, like, what do you kind of make of this interesting world where it's like, you got these lawsuits, you got pointing to Magic the Gathering, you got whatnot, you got like Labubu's and blind bags. Like, I think this is kind of crazy.
I mean, the reason I was laughing, because I was just like, I don't think Valve is making the point they think they're making.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, yes, they are all gambling. They are all gambling. I've said that before. It's like, it's been accepted, but that doesn't mean it necessarily should be, you know? And it's like, I have nothing against gambling, but it is what it is. And if it's not regulated, then, you know, what are we doing? And that's why there's all, you know, there's like, people get furious about like opening like 100 packs of Pokemon cards and not getting a hit, you know, like that kind of stuff. It's like, you don't really know for sure what your odds are. Like people like there are whole channels built around opening thousands of packs of cards to determine hit rates. Like all that type of stuff should be up front, you know, like, and it's the question of like, even though we know a lot of people now buying this stuff are adults, like it is still, a lot of it is targeted towards children. What's, you know, are we basically like, I mean, I know when I was a kid, like I would buy like basketball cards and I just wanted the Jordans, and I would just open all the packs just looking for Jordan and just pretty much like tossing every other card aside, you know? And it's like, that is the mentality of this stuff. And I mean, yeah, again, like, I don't think they're making the point they think they were. I feel like it's like a cell phone.
I mean, people, they're purchasing this stuff. They're agreed to purchasing this stuff. So I don't know how, like the whatnot lawsuit, to me, people are buying stuff, like they're paying good money. It's one thing if they're being had and being taken advantage of by games going on in the background. But this one, it seems like, yeah, New York, just like somebody said in the comments, like they just want their cut. They want their money. They want to make sure that they're getting every piece of nickel and dime and pennies that from any type of output that they can. That's just how it works in this area. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. Like they want their money, and they're not gonna tolerate anything less than have everything, you know, up in front, and make sure they get a license to do the things they're gonna do.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I mean, I agree with you guys. Like in a world where we live with like Poly Market and Kalshi being sponsors of CNN, like I just don't know if we're going to ever live in a world where like, you know, gambling is going to be, you know, regulated. At this point, it just makes too much money that people just want, like what you say, Lawrence, like they just want their cut. So I think these are super interesting stories. You know, we don't really have an update for the whatnot thing, but I thought that the Valve thing was very interesting as it kind of relates to everything going on with whatnot. And that's been talked about for a long time about, you know, mystery boxes and mystery packs. And, you know, I could go on and on about, you know, the EA games and how they do like these fantasy teams and like the FIFA power packs within their video game. It's like a whole thing. But I won't go there. But I just thought that was kind of an interesting topic.
Well, for me, like, I was going to say, one other thing, like about the whole whatnot thing is like, if they were paying attention to some of the dealers that are doing these things and kind of being dishonest, okay, like, but they have a reputation of kind of letting things go. And then all it takes is one unhappy customer to kind of put us in the situation that they're in right now. And here we are. Whereas if they kind of taken care of some of the things that have went on in the past, they might not have had this issue where they kind of let things go on and on. Because again, without that, I don't think that this person has that much of a case, because they, you know, decided to buy these things themselves. Nobody forced them into doing so.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I had thought that there were lawsuits around loot boxes like 10 years ago or so. Like I swear I remember hearing stories about like potential lawsuits on loot boxes a long time ago, but maybe not. I guess I had thought that it all kind of been decided and figured out at some point, but
yeah, I think that they had been filed. I think they had been filed, but I think that you know, there's a lot of disconnect to like the politicians of them being able to kind of understand like what are even loot boxes. You know, they're all in their 70s and they barely understand video game culture. So, you know, I think that those lawsuits kind of went nowhere.
This company is making how much money?
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
that's the answer.
Yeah. Speaking of gambling and packs making money, shout out to Ben Bateman right here. If you guys don't know, Ben Bateman is a huge Magic the Gathering content creator who, I'm not going to play his video, but yeah, as you guys can just see from his thumbnail, he says Strixhaven, which is Magic's new set, is going crazy on the aftermarket with their prices right now. And I have to say, I've been accused of being an influencer before, but I gotta give myself a little pat on the back because I think that I have a lot to do with the fact that those prices are doing really well right now because my cinematic came out for Magic the Gathering and it's getting really well. And so I thought that was kind of cool. I just wanted to use show opportunity to kind of talk about my cinematic. So there you go.
Swag is involved in some very amazing things, and you're a great writer, Swag.
I saw this,
thanks,
dude.
guys.
I was blown away by it, man. I really was.
Oh, cool. Yeah. If you guys, I work a lot on Wizards of the Coast things. So, this one was a particularly cool project. And made me want to kind of hop over and look at the Strixhaven aftermarket. Imagine if they paid me in sealed product. That might actually be a better deal than what I actually get.
Can you make that happen in your contract? If you're like, I mean, I don't know if actually, I don't know if you can pay your mortgage in sealed product.
One thing that's kind of interesting is like I have heard from some people that's like, oh, there's an entire employee economy that kind of exists with all this stuff, which I think is super interesting. But the reason I kind of wanted to bring it up is not to really talk about me, is to kind of actually segue into the idea that Marvel collector boxes have definitely dropped off in value, as far as the height. If you guys were familiar with the Spider-Man set, the sealed collector boxes at one point were selling for $1,100. Now they're down to $315. I think maybe a good buying opportunity, considering that we just had a huge Heritage Auctions event that featured all of these trading cards and things of that nature. And the mega pull from that set in the Beckett 10, the Soulstone, Cosmic Soulstone, sold for $46,000, which is not the high. It was getting.
Did it sell for like 75 or something, or what was the?
I think it sold for like 50 or 55 or something like that. At least as far as I heard. But to me, I thought that was kind of pretty impressive. The fact that it still is getting 46,000. So I don't know. Maybe there's an opportunity to buy some sealed product, and speaking of gambling, go for that big chase, big hit. But I don't know, guys. What do you think about these Marvel Wizards products? You guys are into them? I don't know, Lawrence, if you ever talked about that. Like, you're not a card guy, really, huh?
I'm a card guy, but at the same time, it seems like whenever I want to buy something, the prices are ridiculous. So I just steer away from it. If I could find something like you're talking about, for a good deal, and then I obviously I wasn't aware of this sale for $46,000, that might make me kind of go and say, oh, you know what, this might be worth it take a shot.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy to see that. But, this came out of the major Heritage auction that was their trading card signature. And this auction was unbelievable with the sold prices, specifically with this Pikachu illustrator. Of course, the card that we all know was Logan Paul's Grail of Grails, where he had the 10-0. But a 9-0 sold at auction just a week ago for $1.4 million. I have this Reddit thread pulled up. To put it into perspective, another PSA sold back in August of 2025 for $625,000. And there are 15 Illustrator 9s. But this one got 1.4 million. Guys, the Logan Paul effect is real. What do you think about all that?
Vintage I mean, that's why I don't have a lot of Pokemon cards, but I have a few, and I have some vintage ones. And I decided to put mine up for sale because the vintage market, which had been pretty stalled for a while since the Logan Paul sale, and then there were a couple big first edition Charizard sales, the vintage market has taken off again. And so that's, maybe people are thinking it's cool again or something. Cause I do watch some YouTube Pokemon content, and you can tell a lot of collectors really do focus on just the modern sets. And they don't seem to have that nostalgia so much for the vintage, but yeah, the vintage over the last, I'd say 3 months has really, really taken off. And yeah, that's why I put mine up for sale. Cause I was just like, hey, I'll sell into that hype. so that's what I'm doing.
Yeah. Do you think that this is are we just in mania phase? Is this a total Pokemon bubble, or is this the new norm? What do you guys think here?
You know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of remember before the comic boom took off with that big AF-15 sale. Was it a 9.6 or I forgot what it was. It was in 2020, right around that time frame.
For 3.16 million.
The
whatever
supposed
it was.
M&M sale.
Yeah, like that's what this feels like. It feels like we're just right about to take off. Just and that as soon as that sale hit for comics started to explode. That's what feels like what's happening right now with this.
Oh, so you're saying we're at the beginning of the explosion?
I think we're just like Ryan said. The past couple of months is we've been into it ever since. I'm using the Logan Paul card as the example of the start of it, and now all of a sudden you're starting to see everything else kind of go with it. That's just how it feels to me. It feels like the same thing. And I'm not a Pokemon guy. I have no idea. I'm just comparing what I'm seeing now as to then.
But yeah, I have a hard. We've talked about this before. I struggle to believe the hype when I hear people on Pokemon channels going, well, you know, like I'm buying this because Pokemon goes up 60% a year. And it's just like, man, that is not sustainable. Like, yeah, it might for 2 or 3 years. It's possible. But like you can't have those returns indefinitely because everybody like, and maybe it can happen. So like, and that could be why some of the really wealthy people are getting into this stuff. But if you have those types of returns indefinitely, it just destroys other markets. Like people would just flood into them. And eventually I feel like it ends up dying out. But
yeah, but
I don't know.
Why, but it does destroy other markets, Ryan. And that's why everyone's going all in on Charizard, who from this post right here will tell you that it's beat by a mile Netflix stock, Apple stock, Amazon stock, Google stock, Microsoft, so on and so forth, over the past 17 years. 786% return for Charizard. How crazy is that? That's pretty crazy.
786x. 786.
X, you're right.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Speaking of the Charizard also sold at this auction for $550,000. This is the base first edition in a PSA 10. There was also a recent Charizard that sold, I think, back in October or August, and it sold for the same number. So it's not like that this one increased, but it's important to point out that that number had increased by like 3x of the previous Pokemon sale, which I think, or excuse me, Charizard sale, which was maybe in 2023 at like $100,000 or something like that.
What did this one go for again?
550.
550. Because I mean, like, I think what was the there was the one that was, oh my god,
from the Logan Paul
sale
that went,
not the Logan Paul one, the one from a few years ago, the singer that has all the tattoos on his face, and I can't remember his name for some reason. Post Malone. I think he paid like $350, and at that point, that was, I think, the most that was ever paid for a Charizard 10. You know, and like people, and it did go down from there. I think it had dropped down to like 300 or 250, and then all of a sudden it's back up, and his purchase is looking really smart.
Yeah, absolutely. This one was another shocker. I'm just showing you guys because I feel like this is just painting an incredible story. I don't know if you guys know about this, but this was an original art piece that sold. But here's what's crazy about this. It was done by Ken Sugimori, who is like one of the original kind of artist creators of Pokemon, did this depiction. It's from 1998. I was reading the description down here and trying to understand like what it was. This thing was actually had a letter of authenticity by PSA. This is not like original art, like the very first Pikachu drawing or anything of that nature. This is just one of the early creators doing a sketch that is verified, and it sold for $600,000. Like, that's crazy.
Are we sure this one's real? Like those cards? Like
PSA said it was real.
All right. Yeah. So how small is that? Is it only like 2 inches?
It's 5.25 by 5 on this 9.5 by 10.75 gold trim artboard.
Man,
so yeah, the image is only 5 by 5.
It's really small.
But how many like art pieces of Pikachu are out there? Like, I have no idea. Like, it's not like a comic where I understand original art of a comic is one of one, but you know, there's probably a ton of original art of Batman out there. How many original art pieces? And again, I understand this is not published, but like, how many are there? Like, I don't even know if you can even find that answer. So maybe that's why.
I don't know either. You're right. Like, this could be like, you know, the only time something like this piece has come to market based on this artist. But like, you know, it stands to be pointed out that Pokemon was created in 1996. This piece is from 1998. So it's not like it's the original concept art or anything like that. It's not even published art, as far as I understand. It's just, art that's done by one of the artists. And I highlight it to kind of just put a point of emphasis on the fact that, like, this is the year of Pokemon. Neo got his prediction right, talking about how CBCS was going to close its doors this year. But my bigger winner for 2026 was that it was just going to be another Pokemon year. And so far, I think that's been true.
Yeah, Pokemon it's picking back. It took a breather, for a couple months at the end of last year, but it seems to be. I feel like the modern stuff is still cooling a little bit. It's it's all vintage. Like, vintage is the hot thing right now. Yeah.
Well, other interesting sales from this auction were, we referred to it earlier on in the show, but we had 2 sales of Weekly Shonen, which is the manga first appearance of Dragon Ball Z, which is a Weekly Shonen Jump number 51, and a Beckett 6.5, and a Weekly Shonen Jump number 34, which is the first appearance of One Piece in a Beckett 5.5. These respectively sold for $45,000 for Dragon Ball, $42,500 for One Piece. To put that into a little bit of perspective, I had to go and see if Heritage had any previous sales. Not a graded Beckett 6.5. This was the recent one that sold, but back in 2022, a raw copy of this sold for $6,000, which I kind of looked at it. Seems like it would be at least a 6.5 mid-grade as well. And then a raw copy in 2023 selling for $1,440, although this one was a VG plus. But just kind of pointing out, like, look at where manga kind of is right now. Similarly, this One Piece one only had one prior sale back in 2025. A raw copy sold for $68.75. This graded one selling for $42,500. All of a sudden, you got the sellers coming out with their copies of Shonen Jump. It's amazing how it's like these sales happen, and then, like, magically, these super, super rare things that nobody has just all of a sudden show up. But they're showing up all of a sudden. I've had a lot of people talking about how they, like, are going to their storage locker. They were, like, telling me, like, oh, dude, like, did you see the manga sales? I got to go, like, see if I can find my books and stuff. But of course, this all started with, when friend of the channel, Jeremy Padower, talked about, his speculation of manga and how, this could be the next big thing, that all these manga books are going to go crazy. And Beckett made a specific declaration that even though they are closing up their CBCS doors, they are still going to be grading manga. Guys, I'll stop talking. I'll throw it back to you guys. What do you make of Manga Mania?
I mean, I don't read manga, but I'm a big anime fan, so I kind of have some connection to that whole side of things. But, like, my general feeling on this stuff, whenever you see this happen, is, like, people are buying this stuff. You're adults. You can spend your money however you want. Like, I'm not somebody who's going out there and I'm going to criticize how someone spends their money. And it's like, oh, you're going to lose your money. Like, I don't care. Like, you spend your money how you want. But my thought is, like, when you have these big spikes in price, that's what drives people to go find their inventory or whatever, and just give it some time and wait and see what the market turns out like. Like, we've seen the same thing with pulps and VHS and graded games and all that. Like, you get these really, really big numbers out the gate, and then who knows, maybe they continue to go up, but a lot of times that causes people to go, oh, I have that. And then they go and start getting them graded, and the population reports or the census or whatever starts to explode. And so that's just what I mean, because it is still a pretty modern thing. It's not like these are from the 60s or the 50s. These are still pretty modern things. And so there may be stacks of them, that somebody was keeping in a warehouse in Japan or something. Like, who knows? And so that's the stuff that always just makes me nervous when you're talking about items like this jumping from, like you saw, like 4,500 or 6,000 to 40,000 in 3 years. So we'll see.
For me, like,
we're
seeing, like, the examples that you're showing here, obviously, of things that are really, really hot right now. So, I mean, is it all manga though? I pose that question because I don't really follow too much manga. It's just all manga extremely hot, or only the things that are, having to do with, Yu-Gi-Oh, One Piece, stuff like that are incredibly hot. I need to
It's the
have that
shows
answer.
that are pop. Yeah, it's from
Yeah.
the shows that are popular. That's really what it goes with.
It's definitely the shows. I mean, in that auction, there was a manga that's like the first Godzilla, and that got a record price. So, Godzilla kind of a more universal character. But I think it's just interesting. And I'm curious, Lawrence, if you've had this too, where, in previous shows where we talked about manga before, like I made mention of the fact that like people in comic book collecting circles have been talking about it for a long time. Like, oh, dude, like manga, like just wait, manga. And like it never really popped, or it was like took time, but like now we're kind of here. Like, is this that moment? Like, is this the moment? Like, for real?
It's weird because you mentioned Godzilla. Godzilla's been around since forever, and all of a sudden now that's starting to take off. So it's just weird to me when you see stuff like that it's been around for such a long time. Now all of a sudden, we're reaching new highs on stuff that wasn't hot, from before. I'm talking about like a property like Godzilla. I could understand the One Piece and stuff like that, but for something like that, I don't know. And I don't know if that's sustainable when I see something like that. Like if something's just hot now and it wasn't hot before, even though it's been around for a really long time, I kind of question that. So I'm not sure.
And maybe it's because like a lot of us, from comics, like we all experienced, like, it wasn't that long ago, it's like 2021, 2022, and like just getting destroyed in like 2024, 2025, and so it's like, whenever I see like stuff like do that, I'm just like, oh, I'll wait. I don't need to buy into that. And
when we talk about like, you see hot 10s come out every week. We see some of the same books that been around since the 70s, early 80s, and they get hot for a little bit and then they just kind of go right back down. That's what it kind of feels like as well.
Manu, what do you think about kind of this craziness? And could this be the thing that does Beckett go back on the map? Like, what if manga becomes the biggest collecting vertical and like Beckett becomes the grading company?
I mean, dude, that's what I'll talk about here. It's like with Jeremy and his content, and he's been collabing with a lot of folks. There's a collaboration he has with Whatnot, I believe, was one of the people tagged in it, or collaborated on it, and it's a piece of content that's done extremely well already. But on that desk, on that table, he's got like 100 Beckett slabbed mangas, right? And it's like what this is doing for the Beckett brand in the space of like books and book related things, it's actually really significant because there's no question that so many people that didn't even realize that there's a Beckett slabbed, Beckett branded encapsulation for a book like item right now are being introduced to that. So whether manga
watched my channel, they would have seen the video I did on it like 2 years ago when they started growing.
Yeah, so I mean, Jeremy's got a pretty long reach, right? And Jeremy's very much. I'm an observer. I don't study everything he does. I don't follow everything that he does, but a lot of his content I do see, and I'm observing what he's doing and who he's sort of like joining forces with and things like that. And it's interesting, like because there's the what is his name? Logan Paul. There's the Logan Pauls of the world, and then there's people that we know, that are entrepreneurs in the world, and he's kind of got his hands in everything. He's networking a lot, and I'm really interested to know where this push is going. And I'm not implying anything. I just think he loves collectibles. I think he's all in, and he's excited about being even more involved. And he's like, I want to work with you. I want to work with you. I want to buy anything that is undervalued, regardless of if it's already extremely expensive, because he's spending a ton of money. But anyway, I digress. This is great for Beckett branding.
Definitely is. Is this like the biggest? Honestly, I feel like something I'm just sort of thinking up right now, but I have to think, and no disrespect to pulp fans out there, but is CGC's biggest mistake in the last 4 years take away even more than Ben Gate and all these things was putting resources into developing a pulp vertical and not developing a manga vertical?
I think I said that, I think in that video, I was like, I was expecting it to happen. The instant they had pulp cases, there's no reason you can't start grading manga immediately. I mean, it's the same thing. It's a different style of inner well so that it can handle the thicker books. Like that's the whole point of it, so that you don't damage the overhangs and everything like that. I it is beyond me why they still haven't introduced it. I don't get it. It makes no sense. Yes, I think that is a very big mistake, because the market for manga is so much bigger than the market for pulps. I mean, so much bigger. Like, the market for pulps to me is only going to go down. You know, like I just, I don't see
there's no active market for pulps. Like, you know, one thing that needs to be said is, like, with vintage comic books, like, you have an entire ecosystem of like new readers who, like, they won't all go into collecting comics, but like some of them will eventually. Like, manga readers, some of them will eventually collect manga. You know, video game players, some of them will eventually collect video game. But like with pulp, it's like a thing that doesn't have an active new user base. So the only people that would, in theory, get into pulps are people who are maybe Golden Age fans that are looking for a new flavor of ice cream.
Yeah, it feels like such a small, like vertical. Yeah, and like you said, I mean, you have the thing that it works for it. Like, I just don't get it. Like, just use it, and I'm sure that they've got to be talking about it there. But
there's no question.
I don't know why it's taken this long to do it. Maybe it's figuring out how they want to do the grading standard for it, or what. Like, I know they had to go through that with pulps because it's a different grading standard, but because I don't know what the grading standard is for manga, if it's exactly the same as pulps or what. But yeah, I feel like I would not be shocked if that comes relatively soon, as fast as they can, you know, make it work.
Maybe it's something as simple as finding someone who has expertise in it to kind of be able to grade that stuff. I mean, I don't know. I'm just throwing this out there. Obviously Beckett had someone, and they still have somebody, at least one person, to kind of go through manga and give you all the details, where maybe CGC doesn't have that person in place yet to be able to not miss anything that they shouldn't miss.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And that's just like, I know with pulps, they brought in pulp grading experts to teach them how to do it, you know? And so, like, but there's got to be people that grade manga.
So, so one of the things that Jeremy is saying, and one of the things that we have a friend in chat with us, Late Night Comics, shout out. He said there's definitely, and this is making me interested, but we'll see what I do with the interest. But he says there's definitely time to learn something new and see that the surface is yet to be scratched when it comes to manga collecting. And that's the same thing that Jeremy says. Jeremy feels early. Jeremy is obviously investing in the top end of things. That's why the prices are enormous. That doesn't necessarily mean that these things are peaking. He's just buying the rarer, more expensive stuff. And every week after week, we're talking about One Piece and sort of this you know, this world of Pokemon, One Piece, and I forget some of the other names. Like, even with the mangas, I forget some of the names, right?
Anime world.
The anime world, the general anime world, right? So forgetting the titles, and how large it is, and how expansive it is, and how the addressable market is like bigger than any other, you know, group of IPs ever. So maybe it really is just scratching the surface. You know, maybe this idea of buy your slabbed mangas now is still very early, and that's kind of interesting to me. I don't know squat about it.
The only question is like, oh yeah, go ahead, go for it.
Well, a couple of points I was just going to put out, you know, to that is, you know, last time we talked about manga, I asked the question, like, what is the collecting culture? Like, is there that collecting culture, you know, that actually exists in the same way that, you know, can elevate a collecting culture ecosystem in the way that cards elevate something, or comics can elevate, you know, a grading ecosystem. I don't think that I got answers from some people I knew. I asked them about manga, those who know, and I got some answers. And the collecting culture doesn't quite exist there in the same way. There is a collecting culture, but I think the best parallel, and Ryan, this will tie back to kind of one thing that you were saying, the best parallel is the video game collecting culture of how it came about once grading got involved. Because there is a collector culture, but it's not the same sort of like, I got to get the highest, you know, graded copy. I mean, there is that, but like you guys know what I mean. It wasn't the same, like, you know, look at how good my copy is. And then once grading got involved, there was a lot of friction between the people that were doing it. And there was a lot of asymmetry in terms of information, where once graded video games got hot, obviously, you know, you were getting these like $1 million crazy sales. And it's like, turns out there's actually like hundreds of sealed of these copies that exist out there. And similar to kind of what we're doing with manga right now, it's like, like you said, Ryan, we don't know if there's just people that have boxes that are in their attics that are like pristine, uncirculated copies of a lot of this stuff because there hasn't been the incentive to get any of this stuff put out there. And I think that whatever happens with this manga world, I think is going to be very similar to like what happened with the explosion of graded video games, where there's a huge surge. Some people definitely overpaid and got left holding the bag, but out of the ashes is now kind of a healthy collecting ecosystem that exists from it. And frankly, I'm kind of, somebody who believes in video game collecting. I actually think that it's going to continue to grow even bigger. And I think manga could as well. But that was kind of my thoughts as you guys were talking.
And that was the exact same thing I was gonna say. I was like, I don't know what, I was gonna say, I don't know what collectors are like in that hobby, like, because I feel like it's almost like, I mean, you mentioned video games, but I feel like it's kind of like how the One Piece cards blew up, and they've kind of, at least for now, taken a pretty big hit, because there wasn't like, it seemed like the explosion was people getting into it because it was the hot thing, instead of people getting into it because it's the thing that they relate to and they want to collect and all this kind of stuff. And everybody goes, it's like, oh, but One Piece is the biggest property in one of the biggest properties in the world. And so it's going to be huge, obviously. But it's like, there are plenty of properties. And I think we talked about this on one of the prior videos where like there are huge properties that have tried to get into TCG and have failed, just because there is a big fan base of one aspect of that thing does not necessarily mean that fan base translates to spending tens, hundreds of thousands of dollars for, some collectible. It might, like, I never want to shoot it down. Like I like seeing this stuff pop up. I think it's great, but I also, like, for myself, like, there's no way I'd be buying in right now. I'm too risk averse to that type of stuff.
Well, any other thoughts on manga before we kind of move on to probably our last major topic? We got a few more things to get through, some good stuff, but I want to kind of open the floor if you guys have any other last thoughts on these manga sales.
Not good.
All right.
Move on.
Well, there was an interesting story that happened recently where, Ryan, you actually made a video talking about this, which was a $1 million comic book collection that was stolen. However, it's a strange story because while it seemed to be a new email blast that went out that was like being talked about, it was also apparently a collection that was stolen years ago, and maybe there's an interesting explanation for it. But let me kind of set up a little bit of what kind of happened with this. I'm going to eventually, after I set it up, I'll kick it over to you, Ryan, and then we'll kind of add new information here. But I pulled up this post that had this to say, got the heads up from Metro, who is Metropolis Comics, otherwise known as Comic Collect, about an hour ago. One of their key clients got a huge bundle of Mega Key DC stolen, about 100 actions beginning at 2 to around 190, but well over half below were 100. Tech 1 and 6.5, about 30 rare copies of Early Adventure, and about 75% of all post #1 flashes. The number of books graded are 9.0 or better were around 80%. There were 42 Mile High books and many other pedigrees in this collection. Has me thinking comic crime of the century. No other details that could be shared at this time. The post also shared the list of this book, so I'll just kind of roll through it. But suffice to say, this was a $1 million collection that apparently was stolen, that people were notified in an email blast recently, just this past week. However, it turned out that this collection apparently was stolen 2 years ago or 3 years ago. So there's a lot of confusion.
Was it that long ago? Because I had heard,
yeah.
I mean, the thing I read was last year, but maybe it was longer ago than that.
So in this thread that I kind of perused through, apparently this collection was stolen in 2023. And then there was another collection in 2025 that was like also stolen, but it was not related to the list that we're talking about here. But
okay.
Very, very interesting story. And then apparently, again, this is a lot of conjecture and hearsay, but like in that story, apparently one of the explanations was, because the big thing was like, how do you steal collection? That's like a pedigree thing. Like, what are you going to do? Like, bring these books to Heritage and just say like, hey, you want to sell this stuff for me? Or like sell it at your local comic book store? Like, you can't. Like, they're totally illiquid. But apparently the theory was like, maybe this guy who owned this stuff was like getting divorced, and he like had his collection stolen in order to not have it be divided in the proceedings of his divorce. that was what a lot of people were discussing in the chat, and apparently there's reason for them to believe that. But I thought that was a super interesting thing. But anyways, I'll kind of open up to you guys. I mean, we can talk about the
Oh,
story, or
man, I
maybe we
hadn't
can talk
heard that
about
one.
like, what to do when you get your comic book collection stolen.
Well,
Why are
I
they
mean,
just coming out with this now? Like, why are they just emailing people now if it was stolen a year and a half ago, 2 years?
yeah, that's the weirdest thing about this is the delayed notification. But like the fact the tough part with that though is that if you claimed it was stolen and then something does show up for sale, like that brings a lot of questions to the table. Like I don't know, like I feel like you would never want it to go public like this if it had been, not really stolen, because then like you're really in a bad spot if you try to move those books. But if you read like the comment section from the video I made, like tons of people think that there's like this like black market for these high-end comic books, and maybe there is, but like I don't know. My experience with comics has been that this world that we are all in is pretty small. And even on the level of the billionaires, it's like, it's relatively small. And if you start like messing around and doing, the wrong stuff, like you're going to get in a tough spot in your collecting world, because like people aren't going to want to deal with you, they aren't going to trust you. And like, there's already like, like for me, like I know enough, like I've watched enough things, enough people, like there's certain people I would never sell to and I would never buy from, like it's just like you start getting your name out there as somebody who's dealing in this stuff, and it's going to ruin your collecting life, And so I don't know. I don't so much buy into the conspiracy theory stuff of the like, black market, black market comic deals. But like when you look at that list though, that list is insane. Like the person saying like the comic crime of the century is not exaggerating. I didn't price the stuff out, but I would not be surprised if that list of books, it was around 200, it was like 190 or 200 total books. I would not be surprised if the total value of that got close to, or I don't know if it would eclipse it, but would get close to the value of that Nicolas Cage Action 1 when, it sold for 16 million now, but like it was previously, you'd have to say that was probably the most expensive thing that was stolen. I don't know how much the value in that Pennyworth Batman collection that was stolen would be, but I mean, when you look at the Flash run, it's like half-mile highs. I mean, it's just top of sense. It's like 9.6, 9.6, 9.6, 9. I mean, it's crazy. And there were like some people in the comments were saying they're like, oh, you just crack the book out and sell it. And it's like, if you say that, you don't know Golden Age. It does not work that way in the Golden Age with high-end stuff. This stuff doesn't exist. There is one copy or two copies that like you'll have books where it's like, there's in a run or there in a certain issue, maybe there's up to a 7, and then there's the 196 that's the mile high. It's like that's what it is. And if you have these books pop up all of a sudden, even one or two that are really high grade, it's going to catch people's attention, and people are going to start asking questions, and because you're not going to want to touch it if it's actually stolen, and somebody could, police could confiscate it, and then you lose all your money on that, and so yeah, it's a wild set of books. Like when I saw those, I was like, that is probably, if you had that on the CGC registry, it would probably be the #1 registry set for Action Comics and the #1 registry set for Flash. It's insane.
For me, it's
What do you
just
guys think of
too many variables that we don't have information about this, about, like we said before about it taking so long to come forward, but there's too many things we don't know to kind of speculate what the hell is going on. I agree with Ryan said of like, how are you going to move stuff like that if your intention was to steal it and then resell it? It's got to be damn near impossible. So I don't want to speculate on what I think could be going on because I don't have enough information.
Yeah.
The kind of the interesting thing with it is like the Action one isn't on that list and the Flash one isn't on that list. Like the two like top end book. The Detective one was, which is pretty expensive. That's probably the most expensive one on there. But yeah, the Action one not being there, I was like, my speculation was like maybe was kept somewhere else, but I don't know. That other story is kind of funny to think about.
Yeah. Again, like you said, Lawrence, like you said, speculation. I don't know if it's true, but all of a sudden, like when you think about like all the scenarios of like, yeah, what would someone's end game be to like steal a collection like this? How are you going to move it? And then it was sort of like, oh, like, are you just fake stealing your own collection in order to get around this thing? I'm like, this actually makes a lot of sense to me, you know? But, well, last couple stories here before we kick it over to Manu, who I know I owe you a little bit of a takeover here. But guys, Ken Golden is on the hunt to find the next great seller. He is having I guess what would be a reality show contest. You know, think of it like all the great, reality TV shows that you've seen before, American Idol, America's Best Dance Crew. He's going to have America's Best Whatnot Seller. And he's looking for people to enter in, and he's going to be finding that next Ken Golden. Are you guys thinking that you're going to submit to this? Are you guys going to enter? What do you guys think about this?
I do not have what it takes to be to be that person. I will not be submitting my resume or my application for that.
Same.
I don't know. I think Manu, you could do it. You
Stop. Get out of here. Get out of here, bro.
I didn't even know that he was doing this, but I could be a showman. I don't know if I'm going to put in my application, but I could be a showman.
This is what Lawrence has been waiting for.
I've seen you wear a wig, man. Like,
yeah, exactly.
This could be it. This could be the big opportunity. All things content creation led to this moment for you right now.
Yeah. You never know. I'm waiting for my big break.
So is it going to be like a Netflix show or something?
No, it's for eBay Live. He's just
no. I get it, but like this competition. Like, are they doing it on Netflix or something, or are they?
I don't know. It wasn't clear. I suppose it could just be something that kind of lives as a B story on the King of Collectibles or whatever. I don't know if it's actually going to get its own show, but I'm sure we're going to find out more, once it actually comes out. And maybe Lawrence will be a contestant. But Lawrence, while I have you, as you were the kind of honorary guest here today, I have to pick your brain on this because this is a big moment for you. But we had the He-Man trailer come out.
Yeah.
As the resident He-Man expert, Supergirl also came out. What's the predictions? Is He-Man gonna deliver? Is it gonna be the greatest movie ever?
I don't know about the greatest movie ever, but I let's just say I have some good sources of people who have seen the movie already. And they said they've seen it twice and different cuts of the film. I'll put it that way. And they said if you're a He-Man fan, that you're gonna love it.
All right.
So
man, the trailer for He-Man didn't do it for me. I don't know. But
were you a fan growing up?
I mean, I watched the cartoon growing up, but like it just it felt very close to the cartoon, which I don't know if that's a good thing. Like the costume design and stuff, like it's.
I don't want to spoil anything, so like I have a lot of information. I don't know the full spoilers, but I do have certain spoilers, which I don't want to say because I don't want to ruin it for anybody. But I've heard they went very 80s, which I think is the way they did this. It sounds like it's very genuine. I've heard it's very heartfelt. Like it's really like a story about a boy turning into a man, and that's what it is. So like I think that Travis Knight, he's done a lot of that with a couple of movies he's put out already, and it falls along the same line, and also throws a great nostalgia thing for people who grew up with the product.
Now I will say the Supergirl trailer though, I liked the second trailer quite a bit more than the first one. The first one it didn't do anything for me, but I enjoyed the second one.
Yeah. At risk of sounding like a curmudgeon, I saw both trailers and I'm like, listen, I'll go watch it. But like, I don't know. I'm kind of at that point where it's like, haven't we kind of seen all these beats before? Like in other movies, I don't know. I just feel
James Gunn. It's James Gunn, like I don't know. I don't think he's the director, right? But he's still like, you can feel like his presence in that movie.
Yeah. But we'll see. We'll have to find out, if He-Man sets a new era of He-Man collecting. I hope it does. I hope it does, certainly for your channel, Lawrence. All right, let's kick it over here to Manu. Manu, what's our big surprise here, at the end of the show?
Yeah, it's not a surprise, just something that I personally think is interesting for us to think about. So if we could hop on Swag, if we could hop back up to Heritage and go to that Batman, 1966 Batman, the 9OC sold yesterday. And while you're pulling that up, I'll just talk about it a little bit. So this is Batman's rookie card, yada yada. No, super cool card. And I'll talk about my recent experience with one as well. And I was thinking about buying this one, at least bidding on this one. And here's the thing that's interesting about this. There's a couple of layers for our friends to think about, for us to think about, and maybe we'll have some concrete stuff on the next one. So a PSA 9 of this card sold recently on Heritage for $131,000. A 9 without the OC qualifier. For anyone that doesn't know, OC means off center. Oh.
I'm gonna set you up better. I'm gonna set you up better.
Oh, okay. We're being set up. Let's do it. Okay, so here it is. So this was the PSA 9 that sold, I guess, December of last year. $131,000. Now, this is without a qualifier. So this is just a nice, clean 9. If I'm not mistaken, whoa, were there 10s of this card? I don't know, but I forget if there were 10s of this card. But in any case, $131,000, tremendous sale. And so after that PSA 9 sold, that 9 OC that just sold, that the auction just finished yesterday on Heritage, that 9 OC was made available on eBay and it sold for roughly $4,100. A little bit after the 9 sold for $131,000, the 9 OC sold for about $4,100, $4,200 on eBay. And some of our friends who are with us in the chat, shout out the Real McCoy Collector, and some other folks were like, yo, is that did that go like really undervalued? Like, what is the 9 OC in relation to the 9? How do card collectors look at this and think about this? Is this like a restored comic book where if it's like a $5,000 book, the restored version, depending on the restoration, might be 50% or less of the value? And when you're in really high dollar stuff, when it's like $1 million book and this thing's got all kinds of restoration and a purple label shows up, it sells for like $50,000 compared to $1 million, right? How do people look at 9 OCs? And so when I was thinking about bidding on this card, because I was like, dang, is this like a $20,000 to $30,000 card? I was speaking to a sports card collector who's now into Marvel, very heavy into Marvel, knowledgeable about both. And he was like, I kind of look at OC. He said, I'm a fan of them, but he said, I'm rare in that. And I kind of look at OC as like a 2-grade drop. You know, if you didn't get the OC, this card would likely be a 7. So then I was like, well, a 7 recently sold for like $4,100, right? And I just sold a PSA 6 for $2,750, which happens to be the record for that card, as far as I know. So that was kind of exciting. But that made me think about getting into a higher grade. I was like, well, I did well on that. Let me see about this 9 OC. So if a 7 sells for $4,100, I got kind of uninspired. Oh, that the other thing. While I was figuring out whether I wanted to bid on this, a friend tells me that PSA has done away with these qualifiers. So the miscut qualifier, the OC qualifier, they're gone. So if you were to submit this card now, and anyone keep me honest on this, I've never submitted an off-center card like that and got the qualifier. So, and Lawrence just agreed, so I think we know. If you were to submit this card now, you would get a 7. So I pumped the brakes. I was like, well, I don't want this damn card then. Is this really a $4,100 card? And here we are. It sold for $4,400. And this is the person, presumably, that bought it on eBay for a couple $100 less. But after the fees, I don't think this went the way that he was. I don't think he cared. He or she's probably like, they rolled the dice with it. Maybe it was a $20,000 card. Maybe it wasn't. But I guess we're seeing that, damn, there's a really big difference between a 9 and a 9 OC. This is the equivalent of a 7. And so I just wanted to bring this up because to me, this is fascinating. The card is interesting. The conversation around the 9 and the 9 OC and the qualifiers being removed is interesting. And kind of just that research that I did going into it and what I concluded. And maybe it's just fun for people to think about these things as well.
I mean, it calls into question this sale right here, $131,000 for a 9, which I'll kick it back over to you, Lawrence. Like, I think if the pop report is here, there's multiple of this.
There's more than one. I forgot the exact amount, but there's a handful. Yeah.
It's kind of crazy.
To me, going back to the OC, like I have a little bit of experience with this with vintage cards, garbage pail kits, stuff like that. It's the same thing applies because if you go back to that genre, there are a lot of collectors out there who want to stay away from OC, and that's how I know PSA has gotten rid of it as well, because it really does beg the question. Well, like that's not really on the card. The grade on the card should reflect, the condition, not how it was printed or cut, I should say. So, I get it, but a lot of card collectors, especially vintage, they try to stay away from these cards just for that reason. But for me personally, I agree with you. Do I want to own a 7 or do I want to own a 9 OC? I mean, I don't want the stipulation of the off-centered card. I'd rather just, if I'm going to buy something, I want to obviously the highest grade that I could afford if I want the card without having that OC on it. I just feel like that's a better purchase. It doesn't have that stigma that some of these cards have. So I'm kind of glad that they did away with that, even though I do think for a lot of collectors out there, and if Neo was here, I would like to really pick his brain on this, being the card guy, on how like sports card collectors, they go about it. Not so much, you know, for Marvel, DC, and like garbage book and stuff like that.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I see it probably. I know you were using Restored as a comparable. I think it's maybe closer to like a qualified. You know, like the green, the green label. I think that's really what it's like. And if I could make a decision for like CGC, I'd get rid of those qualifieds and I just grade them straight up. And you know, then and that's basically what PSA is doing here with the OCs. Like, I think it just causes too much confusion where people, like, you know, even in the comment section, we have someone say that it should be 2, someone that said it should be 1, you know, grade different. And it's like, why do you want to deal with that? Just like the grade is the grade, you know, and just, you know, give me that.
How about like a subgrade? I mean, like, you know what I mean? Like a subgrade. All right, it's a 9 condition, but you know, centering is like a 7. Like, you know, like to me, I feel like that's a better option than just doing a 9 OC or just grading it a 7, because the card, you know, presents as a 9 outside of being off centered, and that's not really, you know, doesn't really describe the condition of the card. It's really just how it was cut. So I want to have a subgrade there. I feel like that's a better way to do it.
And another question I had was like, when does the determination become, when does it happen that PSA decides that they're going to put a qualifier of an OC on it rather than just grade it? Because centering is part of the criteria for grading. Is that up to the submitter? Do they ask the submitter what they would prefer? When does that actually come into play? Because I've never had the experience.
Well, think about comic
posting note on it.
Even though PSA doesn't have subgrades, I wouldn't be surprised if, like, in their grading process, because like we see them with like Beckett. I wouldn't be surprised if they, like, in their grading process, they are using some type of like rubric like that uses subgrades. And so it could be that, like, if you have a card that everything else is a 9 and the subgrade for the centering is 2 or more off, you know, like something like that. That's similar to how qualifieds work. Like, if it's like, usually it's like if it's 2 grades or more higher, then they use the qualified. And so it could be something very, very similar to that, that if this was submitted to Beckett and you got subgrades, maybe it's like 9 corners, 9.5 edges, 9 surface, and it's like 7 centering, you know, and it's just like this big gap there. And that could be how it works. But yeah, obviously, because PSA doesn't give us subgrades, it's all just speculation.
But also think about like comics, right? When you have a miswrap on like an ASM 129, they don't grade it a different way. It's just, you know, it is the way it is. They don't break it down and say, all right, we got to bump this down because it has a miswrap. So
comics is different than cards, though. Like, yeah, because comics historically have never been graded down for that. Cards, and we talked about that on a prior video. And the reason I think that that's probably the case is the rarity factor. That cards, if you didn't focus on these little things, every card would be like a 10 or a 9, you know. But with comics, there's just so many less that if you started focusing on those types of things, it would make it even kind of like tougher to see some of those higher grades. And so that's just my speculation on why it's turned out that way.
No, what you guys are both saying is right. I mean, it's just a matter of fact that, like, the criteria for comic book grading, centering and miswraps don't, it's not part of the criteria, and on cards it is. And the qualified conversation, like, factually on cards it is, like, it's part of the actual criteria, not just an opinion. And then the thing about qualified in comic books, it was told to me, and I've never personally submitted one to do this, like before JSA, like if you had a book that was signed and you wanted it to, you know, get a 9.8, but you were fine with it being a green label, you had a choice. You could, I don't remember at what point in the process, but people that tell me they had this choice where you could either have the book remain a blue label, but be downgraded because it has writing on it. They're not going to identify who wrote it or anything, but you could get like an 8.0 with writing on it, or you could get a 9.8 green. And if it was for your PC and you had it signed by J. Scott Campbell yourself, you were happy with the 9.8 green. So they used to give the choice. or you could at least contact customer service and say what you wanted or something along those lines. And my original question was just out of curiosity, for when they make that decision for 9OC or 7, is it up to the submitter as well to like agree to that or insist on something? But
I was going to say, I've done that like years ago with CGC. I'd put a note on the book knowing that there was a signature on the book that wasn't verified. Hey, give me the blue label. I don't want the green, and just mark me down. I don't know if they still do that. This was years and years ago, but they did at one point.
Well, now I think now the green label, as it would pertain to signatures, is a entirely different thing altogether now, because now they have JSA. So they're just going to say it's not verified and something else. I don't know.
Yeah, you could use it for like a 181 missing the value stamp or something like that, though, if you wanted the blue label over the green. But
all right. Well, thank you for letting me bring that up.
Yeah, it was a great topic. I definitely think it was worth talking about, especially as it relates to, the recent Don Russ explosion.
Yeah.
And,
I forgot to tell you.
These types of,
Tell me about like the like I wanted to talk to you about the fact that miscuts are not a thing anymore, because we were previously considering submitting some card 34s and thinking that we'd get miscuts or OCs back. We wouldn't have gotten either. They're done with those qualifiers.
Damn, it just makes me, it definitely brings into question if that 9 sale at 130,000 is just the overpay of the last 6 months or so.
I don't know. Pretty.
Manu thinks it's real.
I think it's real. I think it's real. I think it's real. But it's a fun sale. It's a great card. I didn't look into the stats of the card, but it's awesome. But if a card 34 and a PSA 10 from 1966 Marvel shows up, that's a 9, obviously the Batman. But if a 10 shows up, it's doing well over 131. I think.
For sure. Well, I'm sure that Gary V would probably be the one that ends up buying it. But. Yeah. Last topic for the show, as now has become a bi-weekly tradition, we got to do a little bit of a dork and absolute Batman report. It's not looking too good for dork, guys. 235, compared to absolute Batman, 270, 270, 260, 250. So slight lead right now for absolute Batman.
Okay, Ryan. So if I have a friend list a $700 dork and I buy it, so I spend $700 plus tax to win 100. That means it's really only costing me $670, but I also get the value of being the winner. It's worth it, right?
Mark, you should totally do that.
All right.
I would accept losing if you sacrifice
$670 to do it.
Lawrence, you want to throw your name in the hat? You don't have to put any money up here, but you got to guess here. Dork 1 versus Absolute Batman 1, end of the year. What's more valuable in 9.8?
I'm saying Absolute Batman, even though I recently just saw on somebody's wall on a live sale, the guy had like 10 9.8s that he got back from CGC, but I'm still going Batman here.
Fine. It is what
All right.
it is.
Well, we'll have to see. We'll have to see what ends up happening. But with that, that is the end of our show. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to say thank you all so much for hanging out in the chat. If you haven't yet, be sure to hop over to the description. Check out the Ungraded Truth YouTube channel. Give it a sub. Also, hop over to Spotify. Get us some more 5-star reviews. I would really, really appreciate it. Also, I want to say special thank you to Lawrence Mighty for joining us on this stream. You definitely carried it for us. We'll definitely have to have you back on the show at some point in the near future. In case people are not familiar with you, which I'm sure they are because you've been on the show many times, why don't you let the people in the chat know, if they're watching on our various streams, where people can find you and stay tuned to what you got going on.
You can find me at, of course, Mighty Comics and Collectibles on YouTube. I do my own solo podcast at the Mighty Rewind Podcast. And, of course, on Instagram at Mighty Comics_Collectibles. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate you having me today.
Great having you on.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again, guys, for hanging out this evening. We'll catch you on the next show. Detective Comics set a record for 1.8 million. Nobody really cares.
Who are annoyed that people are asking them questions, is this book banned? That question didn't exist a year ago.
Somebody's submitting like 25 vintage books and getting 15 9.9s.
We always think, how could it ever get crazier? And then it always does.